It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Yeah! No fear here on Declare Your Independence of me, Ernest Hancock, from the Sonora Desert with Dr. Frank Tambury on the Trump Report. Well, what shall we talk about? I have a lot of opinions, and I keep them to myself until they become relevant, and I want to use my opinions to pound on Dr. Frank because he'll have the wrong opinion. You know, because that's what I do.
What else is new on a Thursday?
Right. So, this is, it's like I was talking to James Corbett last night, and he's going, I'm saying we're talking about a lot of different things and, different ways of governance and so on, and how well did the U.S. founders do with their attempt at whatever. And to express your opinion is extremely important. First Amendment, make sure, kind of peaceful dialogue and so on. And, that when that comes under attack, you know who the bad guys are. But that expression certainly was what voting was supposed to be about. And that's why I make such a big deal out of the accuracy of elections. If you don't have that, then rest, take your government, I don't care. If I don't get to really, you just BSing me that I get to have some kind of say voting, then, never mind, we'll do it another way. Well, this is where James comes in that, I don't know, you're kind of losing your anarchist card, Ernie. This voting thing, you're done. And, my deal was, I don't need to have a government rule me. My son-in-law, my daughter and son-in-law, they started a thing. You see advertisements on Freedom's Phoenix for it, and it is a homeschool ad. They have a tire. The Homeschooler Depot, and one of the shirts that's popular there, and it has, "I don't co-parent with the government." Boom! I don't co-anything with the government. So, but if you're going to have this, protection of whatever, all that which is holy in defense of individual rights, how do you do that? Well, this voting thing, Democratic part of this Republic part that representative government you have, bound down by the chains of the Constitution part, I'm going, okay, they're making the attempt. Now, of course, bad guys, that's why they were saying it's only for a moral, people that this Constitution works. It's not made for, bad guys that can find every freaking crack. And, well, they would have to, they'll do it. Well, only if they, were trying to, they do that too. And, well, then there'd be a war, and then they would be, then they do that. So, it's just, you got to get rid of the psychopaths. I mean, just saying. So this is where we're heading into support of the open source education.online that we created for James to emphasize a lot of his really thought-provoking things you need to fundamentally know as history and philosophy and technology and what's happening now in economics and philosophy and governance and a lot of different things, history. And he's focusing on psychology now. He's like, all right, we're going to go. Professor Corbett's going to take you down the path of. And he's used a lot of his shows and research and documentaries and stuff he's had before on the subject, put them into one thing on opensourceeducation.online that we created and we promoted here. And it was, for this kind of thing. I'm going, look, man, start calling. He likes Professor. He won't say it, but he likes this Professor Corbett thing. I definitely don't say it enough, So what I'm seeing is happening is we take it that you never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, that applies, for everything. And the opportunity for people to understand what the battle really is, what it's about, who's engaged, how important the results are. There is an enlightenment that always happens throughout history. There's, before and after mile markers in human history of whatever. There's before this happened, there's after this happened. And some of the main things, certainly technologically, they get the wheel and, fire. I don't know which one came first, but then you have, the 100th monkey, and all of a sudden, boom, everybody knows how to do fire. Then you have the Industrial Revolution. You get, technological revolution. An energy revolution, of this revolution, of that revolution. And it builds up, and you have more and more common awareness, but you're starting, at least now, to be able to archive the information so it is available, which is one of the reasons why we do Freedom's Phoenix the way we do. The chronology of all the information, the hundreds of thousands of headlines, the searchable yada, yada, yada. Before there was large language models and all that kind of stuff, which we may be, delving into a little bit to help with something. But to become dependent on or ruled by it or worship it, that's a whole other thing. But so I can see what's coming. It's an enlightenment. It's a renaissance. This is just access to information. But the information you also need is what happens when you choose poorly. When you do it, you're doing it wrong. Well, when does that happen? Well, it's when you have these kinds of confrontations, these good versus evil, the going down the dark side of you didn't have enough fatherhood being done, men taking responsibility for protection of their family against all enemies, for all enemies, okay? So this is the where I see we're at a shift in the paradigm, the shift, and I've been talking about it for the last ever, but certainly in the last couple of months, I've been going, man, there's something coming. I can feel it. It's prime, man. They're going to hit the primer on this, and here we go. The big giant tubs of AMPHO is sitting there, but it needs to be detonated. What's the detonation? What's the blasting cap? What's the gun primer for the gunpowder? What is it? I'm not even feeling this Charlie Kirk thing. It definitely is definitely, but it was already gonna go, and I can't think of a more poignant, exacting example of someone that wanted to keep it peaceful and willing to go to the belly of the beast to have an open dialogue. It wasn't just to make fun of them. It was to try and save them. There was some real love and compassion there, and get some logic and reason back. And we have at the top of Freedom's Phoenix, something that I wanted to start off with, and then we'll get into all the news and everything, and Trump's in Great Britain going down on freaking King Charles. Oh, my God, Oh, yeah, you're the greatest, most wonderful. And a bunch of other stuff going on, the wars and rumors of wars and, sanction on Russia. Putin's now starting to wear a uniform. Like
I got to step in for just a second about the thing with England. It is kind of a little cute, almost. Trump has just his entire life, I think, just felt, that he always wanted to be a noble person. He reminds me very much of George Washington, which he was a lot like Trump, I think. He spoke to the masses, and yet he was sort of he was in the elite, but he wasn't. He kind of was like the new elite, and the true elite never really recognized Donald Trump. They always kind of put their nose down to him, that he was an imposter that kind of just got into their ranks. And that's how they looked at George Washington, because he married up into money. And so a lot of them, they didn't quite respect him, but he just kept feeling like, I'm a good guy. I'm no different than the other noblemen. And it's often said by the British historians that they said that the flag on the moon would be the Union Jack if the king just simply made George Washington a nobleman. If he just, okay, fine, all right, you're one of us, then the whole thing would not have happened, because it was a class issue. And Trump reminds me so much, I hate to say this, of Washington in some of these mannerisms, speaking to the common person and riling people up, and he walks in both worlds. But I think deep inside, he just wants that respect. The whole idea of the
okay, we'll get into that a little bit.
Anyway, but for him going over, it means a lot more for him, along with the Queen, and I think there's just a little dreamlike with him. But go ahead.
Thank you. The one thing I wanted to start with was the realization of what I think, some of the fundamental problems are that can be addressed by, we get into these subjects, with the need Trump has to be, worshipped by royalty or something, whatever, man. I really could not possibly care less. This is what opinions of somebody that needs sanctions, certainly from royal family on whatever. Seriously, why? With all the accomplished, why? So don't get me going. So this is a stable father figure is essential for raising mature citizens. This was something that it's incentives. It's what we keep going on about. What is rewarded and what is punished. And there's so many thousands and thousands of hours of Charlie Kirk blathering on about whatever, okay? Every one of them is a good gem of look at this, it's, wisdom up. But the ones that rise to the cream on the top, the ones that have the most social impact, the ones that are going, man, that guy was clairvoyant. The ones that are, that's an important one. To have this type of representation of what I think is important is important. To have, this. They killed him for this? Yes, they did. These kinds of, because we're under attack. Our culture is under attack. Well, what is that? Tell me what that is. Well, what was uniquely American was the proper role of government in defense of the rights of the individual. The individual to be able to protect and defend their family, their friends, their community, oh my God, their country. So I am, but it goes to fundamental base things. And I wanted to play this, and then Frank can go on about whatever he wants to talk about, how Trump needs to get a knighthood or something. We'll worry about that later. All right, so here we go. I wanted to make sure that this got in because it was so fundamental to what I think is really going on. And I wanted to make sure that people understood that there is an objective truth. There's something fundamental that is, skip. I wonder if the TikTok will play on here.
Gets better.
All right, yeah, here we go. All right.
Dads are around.
So let me
take
this back to the beginning.
Of any social welfare program should be how do we keep the family together and put dads back in the family. That is the number one priority. We don't have to overthink it. Every number gets better for every community if dads are around. Every number gets worse when dads are not around. Unfortunately, in the black community, dads are the most absent of any community. About 2/3 of all black youth will be raised without a stable father around. And I know it's crazy, right? And that little precious angel of yours deserves to have a father around. And You know, for daughters and for sons, it's different things. For a daughter, that's a father figure to look up to say that is how a man should act, and someone that I ought to one day marry, someone that will protect me from a vicious world, and someone that makes me understand what strength and not brutality looks like, what justice but not revenge looks like. To have a father figure is a silent way of forming a child to be a mature citizen. And unfortunately, as we remove dads from families, government has come in and has taken the place. So some people need help and they need social assistance. All of that should be about incentivizing the dad staying around, not the dad leaving. Unfortunately, with welfare, you can get more money for single mother assistance. And so, you agree, we're actually subsidizing single motherhood more than we are subsidizing family formation. And so, I'm glad to hear about the Fatherhood Initiative, and if I may speak to the men out there, you are a coward and a petulant child if you impregnate a woman and abandon her. You have a moral obligation to stay with the women of your choosing, hopefully in the confines of marriage. This idea that men can just abandon women and, leave the consequences without any responsibility has done such great, it's been a catastrophe for our country. So that's my answer, and I'll say this. The Democrat Party does not talk about dads at all. The Republican Party, we are talking about how men need to be men again, in the home, take responsibility, provide for your family, and with strong families comes smaller government and a better country.
Thank you so much. And I do.
The number one objective.
So this is, what I wanted to inject. There's the fundamental truths that when they talk about the United States being, the Constitution is wholly inadequate for less than a moral country. To even know right and wrong. To have, that's why I go on about, what are you, Klingons? Your Vikings? We're going to rape and pillage, and kind of that's how we attain our highest, whatever. I mean, we're the best because we got more skulls, clipped to our predator belt. There has to be a standard. There has to be, and something that stands the test of time, of propagation, of going forth and multiplying, of being successful as a species, and it's the family. It's procreation, it's your posterity, your future. This is where even, anarchist atheists like Ayn Rand comes in and was, talking about life, being pro-life. Now, I'm not sure what her issue was on abortion, whatever, that's not the point. She was going, you're pro-life or anti-life. You're promoting life, living, the pursuit of sustaining your life with your liberty and property. This concept of what is the primary goal, to keep on keeping on as a species, which is promotion of life. If you're not doing that, you're anti-life. A lot of these policies are anti-life. Our tax money is going to anti-life. Foreign policy, anti-life. Anti-life, anti-life, anti-life. To what end? To those that would exploit our lives to benefit themselves. That's it. So how do you know between good and bad? Well, when I go freedom, good, government, bad, 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 what am I saying? Evil. When you do bad, really bad, you know it's bad, you amp up the bad, a little bit more bad. Let's put this little topping of, bad on there. Little crust, little sprinkles of bad on top of the bad with a little some bad to the children. So this is, I'm glad that we're having this awareness. I have not been a fan of there needs to be another Charlie Kirk. Who's the next Charlie Kirk? Nobody. No, you. We each need to take our responsibility and that's why I emphasize the reason I think he was killed, regardless of who did it and how many conspiracies or whatever. It was concentrated in Charlie's efforts so much by free speech, going to the belly of the beast, having an impact on Generation Next to threaten the status quo the status, they, them, those, so much that whatever the experiment they threw chemicals and influences together, and I mentioned this last night, sophomore year, and I'm almost done, Frank. I'll get ready. I'll throw it to you in here in a minute. When I was a sophomore in high school, there was an experiment, and I think it was a beaker. Imagine like a 6-inch wide beaker, about 8 inches tall, and they put sugar in it. Just filled it up. I'm like 3/4 full with sugar, as I remember. And I think it was sulfuric acid. A high concentration of. You only get it in chemistry labs in high school or whatever. And they poured a high concentration of sulfuric acid in there, took a glass stir stick and stirred it, then just stepped back. It didn't take long, 10 seconds or less. It started to smolder. It started to smoke. And then immediately it grew into like a 3-foot, 4-foot high column of black carbon, just pure carbon. It just went boom. And I went, that was the coolest crap ever. Woo, this chemistry thing. Then you start learning about endo and exothermic reactions and the speed and blah, blah, blah. Well, what happened was, that's what's going on now. Amaryllis Kennedy, daughter-in-law to Robert Kennedy Jr., she married his son, the third, and was a CIA NOC, which is a non-official cover, kind of secret agent woman. I think she was at Oxford or whatever. And she had married another CIA person, had a couple of kids, and then divorced for whatever reason and married RFK III. And she was being interviewed on Tucker, and she was talking about, and this is before the election, I think, in like October or something, and she's going, this Trump derangement syndrome they know. What they do is they immerse you from all directions, on your phone, on your tablet, on your TV, at school, university, every professor. I mean, you are immersed in this, big enough lie, often enough, everybody believes it, kind of mass formation psychosis, whatever the hell you want to call it. You are going to have an expected result from somewhere of the millions of Generation Next that you're having this influence on. Somebody's going to grab a rifle and shoot somebody. Just saying. And when they live in their own little, trans furry worlds or whatever, it's all reinforced. Armed queers are going to go take out the militia and go, that's going to be a short war. I mean, they don't have to convince us that we're like, God, they're really? Do they think that? Well, the people orchestrating it and paying for it and subsidizing it probably don't believe it's going to really have that big an impact on us. But they know there's a segment of society, the fringe, that one comes back the first holidays from university and all of a sudden they're binary gay with the nose ring. That's something to do with the nose ring. I don't know, you like me lending around. But so here they come, you're the patriarchy and kind of doing it wrong and whatever, and what happened to my kid? I mean, so this is who they're targeting, and it is the beaker sulfuric acid sugar experiment. If you immerse people in all vectors, you got the Jimmy Kimmels, they're dropping like flies. The View, Whoopi Goldberg, whatever her co-host's name, I don't care. And then, Colbert and Lemon and Kimmel and all these, out of freaking just economic, everybody's noticing what the hell enlightenment we get. Are you serious? Well, they took away their money. USAID, a lot of it. Trump administration's threatening to go after these NGOs, supporting, subsidizing violence. Pam Bondi's, well, we got to go after some real hate speech. Whoa! She got pushed back on that one. No. There's no such, no. So this is a mile marker in human history. There's before and there's after. And it's just an understanding of fundamental, basic good versus evil, life, promotion of living versus anti-life. This is what's going on. It was so obvious that it was going to happen. Freedom's phoenix. From the ashes, freedom's rebirth. We've been expecting this for a long time. And advocate, and the power of no, the inspiration of somebody in the crowd. You know, Corbett did a new documentary on, you know, the psychology of and, you know, bad guys, and Frank will have plenty to say about sociopaths and psychopaths and so on. But Ceausescu and, what was it, Romania, I think. It was the late 80s. I remember this. And all of a sudden, the people just rose up, stormed the thing. Him and his wife put him outside and shot him. And you find they were having baby factories in, you know, hospital wards, raising the next automatons because they didn't have Optimus Tesla robots yet. I mean, you know, it's just craziness because it was unchecked until it was checked. And the one thing that happened, he emphasized this one big crowd, and he's up there speaking, and I rule, and, you know, I kick your ass, and, you know, I'm in charge, and whatever. One guy in the crowd, risking everything, and you've seen the same pictures like this, you know, Hitler rallies, and one guy just not playing, not Sieg Heil, and he's not playing. And they become famous and so on. But this one guy goes, boo. Took one guy. Then everybody, boo, 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 boo. And then you could see in Ceausescu's face, he's like threatening, yeah, take it down, people. It was so overwhelming, it was done within days, he was dead. Turning point has turned into tipping point. A tipping point of what? To where? To whom? He was such a good example of dialogue, and that you have to resort to violence when you have no other argument, nothing, and people are seeing it. I don't see any of these rallies or any of the people, yeah, let's go kick ass and get, and when Trump and Bondi and, you know, JD always got, we're going to, you know, yeah, you're going to what? You're going to advocate for, you know, policies, domestic policy, supporting family? You're going to advocate for, you know, lower taxes, burden, inflation, you know, to support living? Are you going to do that? The real core problems. So I think just as much as anything else, the Trump administration may be more susceptible to the influence of the people, but I don't think they get it. Not really. It's going to be us. That's why I don't advocate for another Charlie Kirk. I'm glad his wife Erica is out there doing this. Is all in Arizona. You know, I have friends, you know, Frank, you know, our experiences, you know, with contacting, whatever. And they've got a big thing coming on this Sunday that we, you know, may or may not go to, or we got plans to at least watch it with friends. And so, I mean, so it's a thing. But what is the thing? What's the thing? So this resurrection of the ideology of what made America great again, if Trump doesn't recognize or understand what it really was, it's going to be blaringly obvious. And running to the front of TikTok and saying, oh, we're for, you know, and Charlie always wanted, you want to give more money to Israel and Ukraine, and what, yeah, no. Nice try. So this is a time just for your own education, whether you participate or not, is to pay attention of what rises up, gets pushed down, what's supported, what's defended, what, you know, is coming from organizations, individuals, people, philosophy, YouTube shorts, you know, whatever. This is going to have a big, giant impact on the future of the planet. Freedom's phoenix is now. Frank.
Hey, Ernie, and welcome back, audience, to another torture session of the Trump Report, whatever it is now. I'm just going to comment briefly, and then I want to talk on swing the audience on whiplash to another news point first, and then we will get back to Charlie Kirk. I mean, that's the story to talk about, and Ernie and I are probably going to go way into this. We sometimes get into rants about culture and different things, and this is just one of where the rubber hits the road in many parts of many of our philosophies and the nation itself. You know, it is a turning point, and it is fascinating as a canary in the coal mine to see so many people who are apathetic, or at least were afraid to grab the mic, now starting to do so. This is a transformative moment, more than, to be honest, I expected. I mean, I respected Charlie Kirk, but I was not in his demographic. I had gone through my own Charlie Kirk transition way back in the day through a gentleman named Irv Homer that long-term listeners of the show have heard me talk about ad nauseum. I'm sure Ernie's tired of hearing it, but when there's that one person that's made that change, and that was before the internet, so it was pretty rare to find someone like that. He introduced me to Ron Paul way back in 1988. He introduced me to Irwin Schiff. That's how even I got to know Peters, because I had a private lunch with Irwin because I met him at a hotel when he was selling his book, The Federal Mafia, and I went to the book signing. And then afterwards, he asked me out for a drink. I was only like 20 years old, and he took me and my father out. And I'll never forget that. These are the experiences I had.
Peter Schiff's going to be on tomorrow.
Oh, is he? I got to tell him about my time hanging out with his dad. But anyway, he was my influence and changed my life. And Ernie and I would not even be talking right now if it wasn't for Irv. God help her, Ernie. But anyway, I ditto everything that Ernie had talked about. But before we get back into that, I want to just mention the news item that is massive. If it wasn't for Mr. Kirk's passing, the assassination and transformation of our nation, the biggest story really is that the Federal Reserve dropped interest rates, as we all know, a quarter basis point. And, normally that wouldn't be such a big deal, but I think there's much packed into that. If nothing else, you're looking at the loss of autonomy of the Fed from the pressure. And in fact, I think this is going to the Supreme Court, or we'll go to the Supreme Court about whether or not, one of the boards of the Fed, I forget her name, but it was trumped up charges, in my opinion, to get her off and shoot a shot across the bow to the rest of the Fed chiefs that you better get in line, which basically means that the Federal Reserve will be now under the thumb of the executive branch for now and forever if this goes through. And, granted, maybe it doesn't matter, because I think many people believe, and I'm curious what you think, although I know you're just going to scoff at the idea, is that when this economy finally breaks and, the Federal Reserve is shown to be as just useless as it's been, or actually more just damaging if nothing else, but I think some people might just find it, normies might just find it useless, well, then the Fed will probably be disbanded. Despite all of our chants about end the Fed, they should have done it a long time ago. I think it is going to happen, but it's going to happen out of where there's nowhere to go. And when they lose complete confidence from normies and just basic investors and the worldwide investors, they're going to have to blame it on something. So they'll just blame it on the Fed and say, well, you know what it was? It was the way the Fed was organized. And maybe certain people didn't get enough opinions, and maybe it was structured wrong. But trust us, we can do it better next time. And something else, before Ernie even says it, they're going to try some other restructuring of the Fed or whatever they're going to call it. Most likely will happen. But that would make sense to put the Fed under the executive control now, because at least, well, not that I want them to do that, mind you, but when it's this broken and there's nowhere else to go, then you start having, as they say, desperate times call for desperate measures, which is what we're finding now, and going back to the whole Kirk assassination, where you have Pam Bondi, who should be fired, in my opinion, but that was a while ago. But you're having the conservatives starting to, they're getting backed into a corner culturally, and what do they do when you have an assassination? I mean, do you just sit back and take it again? Like, how many times does someone, a battered housewife or a husband or something, just keep getting hit, and you don't want to push back? And at what point do you finally push back or hit back? And then the minute you do, now do you become the very thing that you tried not to be? But on the other hand, how many times do you get hit? Because the more you get hit, you're giving permission to the other side that you're willing to take it, and they get more aggressive and they'll be more demeaning. And so, this is there's not an easy answer to that. It's like the chicken or the egg. And Ernie and I have had some long, I thought, productive and fascinating discussions on that very point, because it kind of cuts to the baseline of a lot of this for activism and what the principles are and purposes. And of course, Ernie would say it's about principles. That's the point. You don't want to get into the mud with the pig, but on the other hand, how do you handle it? Not to mention when you're dealing with large groups of people. The individual can make that choice, but when you're dealing with large groups of individuals, there's always going to be somebody who's going to, I hate to use the word buckle first, but enough of a voting group that says enough of enough. If I don't feel safe, you got to do something. You got to do something. You got to do something. So politically, whatever side someone's on, when they feel threatened, they're going to have to finally react, and we're seeing that now, which we'll get into with the whole Kirk deal in a bit. But I think the same is happening with the Federal Reserve. They're desperate times, desperate measures. So, to sit back and have the Fed just turn around, be what they've done before, their own political island where they just decide, what to do with the world's quote unquote largest and most powerful economy. Like, we kind of scoff at that. That's too powerful for times like now, where Trump needs to right the ship now, the way he sees it. I'm sure everybody sees that this is falling apart. And if nothing else, I'll just skip to the end version for Ernie on this one point, which is fine. Trump's got an ego, and the last thing he wants is this thing to fall apart on his watch, which, is a shame that the ego will have him kick the ball down as much as he can, because he can't just directly confront it that way.
Always count on that.
Yeah, except Dr. Paul probably be the only person who would say, "Bring it on, bitch," and he'll take it on and do what would be proper, not care about the history books, because actually the history books would, in retrospect, give him the credit probably that way. But nevertheless, so the autonomy of the Fed is really what this is about. Powell, did you watch the press conference with Powell? I mean, it's not very eventful, but he gave us.
I was doing something productive yesterday. I saw the headline, it's up there, and I get whatever. I don't give a crap.
Touche.
Well, the only thing I did know is that Trump's one of his guys on the board voted for a 0.5% reduction in rate, and they did a quarter, and I don't care. It's just they're so irrelevant for the tsunami that's coming. Right. They have no idea.
Right, exactly. So just to be clear to anyone new listening, it's not that I'm watching with bated breath going, wow, what's the Fed going to do? Because I have so much respect and admiration for what they're, and the control they have over our economy. Oh, no, they're just standing around. In fact, that's kind of what Powell talked about. He was asked a couple of questions, and it's, you could kind of hear he was throwing in the towel, and he was trying to throw off blame for himself, and I think also the anger or frustration that he's being controlled and strong-armed by this administration. But he did a good job not showing it too overtly. But he was basically just saying, "Yeah, well, sorry, I'm not making this up." It's like normally they still act like they're in control. Like, oh, we're still in control. We still have tools at the Fed. Just so you know, we have tools. They always say, what tool? You print money and lower interest rates or screw out interest rates. I mean, that's all you really do. That's all the Fed does, right? But we got all these tools. We have confidence in us, and trust us. We're in charge. Forget that debt clock thing. Don't worry about it. We're too big to fail. Well, this time he was basically just sounded weak. He sounded like he didn't have as much testosterone in him. He probably should get checked. And he was like, yeah, well, we do our best. I'm paraphrasing by the audience. They're saying, well, I was asking about interest rates. And he says, yeah, the target is 2%. And then they said, well, didn't you say that last time that the target was 2% and it's not 2%, it's higher? And he says, yeah, well, that's just our target. Like, he was just, you basically almost admitting that it's wishful thinking. It's just, yeah, that's what we'd like to do, but there's no teeth in it. There's no agency. There's no, of what he's doing. And it's almost as if, and Peter Schiff actually made a mention about this on his show. He was talking about that. It's almost like the weatherman. And they often said that God made economists, to make weathermen look better, as far as how much they can properly predict things. But anyway, it's almost like he's just trying to step back and say, without actually admitting that the dogs got out of the barn, or whatever, the cattle got out of the barn, and they're just roaming around, and this whole thing is a joke at this point. It's the closest I've ever seen and heard the Fed act like they're not really in charge. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, if at least I got that sense, if you compare it to others, those of you who've watched them in the past, God help you. But if you sense that, well, what about our creditors? What about other sovereigns? What about other, it's kind of a sign, wink, wink, that we really have lost control of the ship. Now, before Ernie and half this audience, or all of you guys say, what do you mean we just lost control of the ship? That happened, heck, we could argue back when we were taking off the gold standard, for God's sake, to some degree. But no, that was the take-home message from yesterday. Also, regarding the economy, and maybe, Ernie, you've already come to terms with this. I don't know. I've been kind of 50-50 on it, on what I'm about to say, but I think I finally see the handwriting on the wall. It's kind of like we all knew tsunami would be coming, but until you see it crest over the horizon, you can't quite make out exactly when it's going to happen or how, right? You just know, the earthquake happened in the ocean, tsunami's coming somewhere, and when you finally see it, then you can start arranging. But one of the quandaries that many of us have had in preparing for this financially is, if you're putting your money into non-dollar assets, many of them are commodities or technically speculative assets. They're not investments where you actually generate an income. So many people who are putting their money in 401ks and making money the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you could argue, they've been making, quote, money, even though it's all fiat. And, gold if you have gold in your safe or at the gold holding company or wherever you have it, it just sits there. It doesn't really make money. Yeah, I know there was a couple outfits out there that try to give you a little interest on it. But, that we've been sitting on this value or money without doing much. And one of the reasons has been that you don't know when this problem will happen. We go with the Great Depression, which happened overnight. People had money, the next day they're bankrupt. And we hear those stories. And that is certainly one way that this thing can play out. So
yeah, excuse me, Frank. I just got to let the audience know we're still recording. It's going on stream fine, whatever. But the screen is frozen. And I can't move or go back to the graph, whatever. But it doesn't matter. Most people on this listen to the MP3 on their tractor anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
But they so that's why the graphic isn't changing. But it's stuck on psychology course, James Corbett, the open source education thing, and BlackRock Ways tokenized ETFs on the blockchain, but we all want to talk about that. So it's the Lord has locked it on whatever he wanted it locked on. So definitely not.
All right, thanks.
Go ahead.
So anyway, the problem is that if the economy is going to crash like it did before and has done in other countries in history, then you want to have your assets already now. Although if you really wanted to make money, is if the economy is going to go down but do it in half steps or in a spiraling over time, that would be preferable, because then you could make money the way everyone else is with fiat and, flipping houses and other types of investments everyone else has made. You create a big cash reserve, then sell it all off when you start to see everything switch, and then buy a bunch of about non-dollar assets. That would be the most brilliant move. Of course, that often doesn't happen because the people who are into fiat and making money the typical way often don't understand how and why the economy eventually is going to spiral out or crash. And the people who already know it's going to crash just by, it's called math, they're the ones that often don't trust the very system to do what I just said. But that would be the best way to optimize, if you knew that the economy would fall apart in time, slowly. And anyway, it seems as if the consensus from people smarter than me is that that's the direction it's going to go, that less and less are we looking at just overnight everything changes and the economy crashes. Now there's going to be a bunch of decelerating or mini crashes, let's say, along the way. But as a whole, there won't be a before and after, which I think is good for people, I would say, like many of us, because for one reason, it gives you more time to buy things, right? You can still amount your assets and diversify a bit more as this goes on. Also, I think that's better just for us as a people. I mean, you have less riots and people coming after you. Now, Ernie doesn't have to worry about that where he's at. But, as far as...
They get out here, they're beef jerky by the time they get out here.
Yeah. as far as having like the shock to the system, it won't be. I think as this slowly spirals or quickly spirals, eventually you're going to start to see the gold twirlers, the guys with the signs on the street corners. We buy gold, spinning them around. We're not up to them yet. Notice those are the canaries on the coal mine when grandma finally figures it out. So we're a ways from that. But I think it's just this.
That's happened before. I forgot about that. You have the twirlers out there, go do your taxes at whatever, or go to the mattress store or something, and they get creative too. Some of these guys are pretty good. But I remember there was a time, I don't remember when it was.
It was 2008, dude. That was the Great Recession. That to me, I'm always looking for that. It was like when you would go into a pawn store will buy gold, but there were places like regular jewelry stores that just basically sold jewelry. Suddenly they had these like makeshift signs, almost like from Ernie Hancock's workshop. They were like these makeshift signs that they were putting in these fancy jewelry stores in Scottsdale. We buy gold, and then the street corners, everyone was trying to outfox everybody. In fact, there was a guy at the apartment complex I used to live at after medical school. I was around, because I was still residency or building my practice during 2008 and 9. And I'm happy that the Fed actually lowered interest rates as they have with Obama, because it got me another 10, 15 years to actually create a business and be able to have some savings. I was very frustrated that I was in debt out of medical school. I knew it was coming, but I didn't have the resources at the time. But anyway, there was this guy at the apartment, and the guy did just worked at a restaurant or something. But he and his brother got into gold selling. It turned out that there was like a network, kind of like an Amway kind of company that was popping up, teaching people how to buy gold from their relatives and friends. And it wasn't necessarily a scam deal, but they realized that, of course, gold was at all-time high for then. And a lot of older people either didn't know that the gold price was up, or they would not sell it at the time because they didn't trust some pawn shop. But they realized that loved ones or family members they would trust. So if a family member asks, hey, do you have any gold on you? They're probably not going to tell some stranger at a store. They would talk to a relative. And so they were trained on how to tell them about the gold price, and then how to measure it. So you would buy this little mini scale, and also whatever that tool was, the electric tool, where you can prove, how much gold purity is. I know a lot of, the metal shops all have them. And so they would just make an investment in one of the machines, and then be able to, right on the fly, you're at a party, you ask grandma, hey, can I see your ring? You put it on, and you can give her a price right there, a spot price adjusted and whatever. And then you give your grandma the money right there, and then you sell it to this gold company that was amassing this. And then they would actually put it in little envelopes. Oh, remember that also? There was a company that was making like the old Netflix with the DVDs, where you would just take your gold and drop it into those little plastic envelopes that were very generically marked, and you just sell it into this number that was on the television screen. I remember they were doing that. So it was peak, insanity of normies suddenly in the gold rush and silver. Of course, they were selling it, which I guess they were right at the time, because we kicked the can down. For many of us, we thought that was the crash, that was the beginning, and they were able. But
it was arbitraged all the hell. They were taking a big, like now the premium. I don't know. It used to be standard like $60, $80 on gold. Now it's like a lot more, probably double or something.
Yeah.
And if you could get to where you could buy 1 ounce silver at $1.75 over spot, woohoo, we win. Now it's dollars, and oh my God, and it would go the other way too. When it's $20, $40, whatever, an ounce of silver. Well, they don't pay that. They pay less because they making money at the transaction. So these guys that you're sending all this into, yep, it was this much worth this much, and you get this much, and the rest for us, ha, 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 which is fine. I mean, they didn't put a gun to your head. But the people that were sending in their jewelry and so on, glad I got this gold because I need the money. And I remember at the time when gold was, $800 or something, it was fairly lower. And I remember my wedding ring that I don't wear because I keep snagging.
What?
About ripped. Hey, I work for a living, man. You get ripped fingers off and stuff. And so, in fact, I got another ring. Don and I both traded in our other rings because they were not conducive to working. But, and we got nicer stuff, as we could afford it. So I had this nice ring, and it's kind of heavy, and it was, God, like $800 in gold back then. Lord knows what it is now. I got it hidden now. I mean, it's in the safe now. It's worth taking my hand off now. I'm not going to San Francisco wearing my damn wedding ring. It ain't happening. So people have, in different cultures, they have gold as not just a show off, but as like a dowry. It's their wealth. It's what they've invested. It was passed down from generations. And a lot of times you don't know how much that got passed down. And if they keep it, it just keeps building in names of families. In jewelry, which is why when they did the gold confiscation, the jewelry was exempted. Woo! Well, let me make some earrings out of this Krugerrand. Krugerrand. So this is becoming obvious now to a lot of people that, like you say, when they start doing the jewelry, sending in the envelope thing, and the guy spinning the sign out front of the strip mall, then you kind of know the shoe shine boy is telling you which stocks to buy.
Right.
So here we go.
It's like there's three stages. There's the gold bugs, the Austrian schoolers, the people that already, we're early. In fact, some of us are just too early, and we left some money on the table that we waited that long. And it is what it is. I'll fess up. That's me, and it's a little frustrating. It was this long that they were able to kick the can down. But it is what it is. Shows you how big this bubble is going to be. Then you start to have what they call the smart money, which are the people that, they're the sharks. They have tons of money. They do this all day. They're watching things. They may not have an ideology or philosophy except making money. And they're the ones now, we switched to the smart money phase just the last month or so. I'm sure Peter's going to talk about that. I think he's great at identifying it. Where that these guys are the ones that are doing what I mentioned. They made all the money in the stock market, all bloviated out market, and now they're selling their positions in stocks, in large quantities, trying to do it as quiet as possible. But the smart money is dropping out of the dollar, and they're buying these assets. And, of course, even the sovereigns are doing their own way. Such as I told you about China buying I keep forgetting the name of it, but the concentrate before the mud gets purified for the metals themselves. They'll just buy the concentrate from other countries, and that way they can buy the mud. And there was a technical term. I apologize. A lot of you guys are shouting at me. But then they just for the dollars. They're getting gold from it, but it's not recorded that they're buying gold because if they buy mud, that's recorded as okay. They're still using dollars. You buy gold, then technically now you're giving up U.S. dollars. You're getting outside the dollar, which of course changed the price, which nobody wants. But anyway, that's stage two, and that's what we're having now. And also Peter, he's the one that brought it up that the smart money, you can tell it's there because typically when gold price pulls back, usually the mining stocks will go down. If they even go up at all in the first place, because it's been such a stubborn market. But now, for the first time, at least since Peter's been, a thing and talking about it since I've been hearing him, 2005 or 4, the gold price would pull back a little bit, which, it's probably going to pull back a little bit. It probably needs a minor correction pretty soon. But when it pulls back, all of a sudden, the mining stocks are not pulling back. They're staying where they are, if not going up a bit. So that's not because of just some retail investors. This is a major money going in there. There was also a guy, he was like some hedge fund guy, whatever, who was, all into regular money. He suddenly got converted and into the Austrian school. Did you hear about him? He bought like $1 billion in silver just last month. It's something like 1.5 of the global production he bought at one time. And he's just like, you know what? I realized the economy's screwed. There's no way out of it. He even threw shade at crypto. He goes, yeah, and he goes, I've analyzed it, and if even crypto, you guys are going to get ripped off.
Okay, let me express myself a little bit. The problem is that when people do this, they go, oh, it's done, it's over. We're going to have to, I'm all in on precious metals because duh. The other forces have to suppress that. The saving of the petrodollar, the dollar, is what this crypto thing is about. They need to suck up all that liquidity, all that inflation, all that money that's out there, all the other countries that are bad. That's why Trump freaks and goes, "You're trying to abandon the dollar. You're not allowed. We'll sanction, kick your ass, and I got bombers and big military." And that's when we say, "Look, man, what supports the dollar? F-16s, F-35s, B-2 bomber. That's what supports it." Because it always comes down to that. When they're starting to do, we're just going to go over here and do, a BRICS thing or different other currencies or even crypto or, smart money of whatever the hell. They're going, "Oh, no, 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 no." And the crypto thing was a legitimate threat that could be flipped on and off at will. Now, we learned this with Tim Picciott when he started as the Liberty Advisor. He's a financial advisor. He saw where this was going because digital immediate transfers and wire, the banks, they already got that going on. Their overnight lending to meet their reserve requirements, which they don't have anymore, whatever. For us to be able to invest in any equity, any stock, anything, I'm sorry, are you a certified, legitimate, have enough net equity? Are you one of us to be able to invest in this new tech that's going to make you a bigger gazillionaire? But not the regular people. You're not allowed. This is why they went after initial coin offerings, ICOs. So they go, "Oh, you're not sophisticated enough. You don't know enough. You're not enough." Now the richest guys are what? The guys that bought crypto. So, sucks to be you. Shut up. Don't tell me whatever. So then all of a sudden, here comes the financial system. They're going, "Nope, nope, nope. You're not allowed to do it. You can't talk about it. We fine you, imprison you, whatever." It's like, oh my God, you're trying to get, prevent somebody from getting a vaccine or something. So they're going, all out on you're not allowed to do crypto and push until you have to. Right up until they make you. Right up until they're the ones that benefit. They're the ones that are doing it. They're the ones that are having these ETFs. Now, this is what we're, the Lord wanted us to see. This right here. I don't think it'll go to it. No, that's frozen up. BlackRock weighs tokenized ETFs on blockchain and push beyond treasuries. The world's largest asset manager is exploring putting exchange-traded funds on chain. Okay, what does that mean? None of this shorting, 2-day waiting period, 3-day, whatever kind of, it's instantaneous settlements. It's like, all right, I want to buy, boom, and it's done. Well, Patrick Byrne goes on about what he calls the pig's breakfast, all the bleeds in the market, who gets commissions and this and that. You're starting to see a lot of things about auto insurance. Well, the majority, hell, if not half or more, of the fee that you're paying auto insurance goes to the salesman, the commissions and so on. What? And I saw this coming a few years ago where my son-in-law that deals in financial planning, there's a lot of annuities and so on. A lot of the different packages that they offer, they provide a service and so on. But they were getting, here comes the government. They're going, "Oh, no, you guys, we have decided you're making too much money, so we're going to outlaw making too much money if you're doing too much money." And, well, who does that? To what end? To benefit whom? You're in a free market. Can you be? It's like gold. They charge a premium on it. Now, when you look at, gold, gold is at 36.41 right now, 36.41. Well, to buy a gold eagle is 38.57. So what is that? That's a couple $100. That's over $220 premium on it. I remember it was like $60 forever. Oh my God, it hit 100. But now it's like 200 and woo, here we go. On silver, it is at 41.73, almost $42. A silver eagle is 47.55. So that's a premium of a lot. It's like, $7, $6. So I'm going, damn. I remember when it hits $3, like, damn. So this is, the market. That's what, because that gold price, that silver price is based on, I think, a kilo brick or something like that. You want to get it down to closer to it. You're going to have to buy it in more quantity. But the whole thing that I'm seeing is the shift towards token. They keep going, Everything will be tokenized. Toka. We saw this happen during the housing crash. During the housing crash.
Wait, Ernie, can I finish my point? I was in the middle of my point, and you just chimed in for a quick second. But we're 1 5. Let me finish what I was talking about, if you don't mind, for a second. So I was talking about that there's 3 stages to this, right? There's the gold bug people who are really early, who have already been having this, and we've been waiting for the movement, the markets to change. And it seems like the first stage, though, or the second stage, is when the smart money gets them, the big money, the people who follow this every day. And we're going through that right now. Now, I did mention that gentleman who spent $1 billion on silver, and he was even dissing crypto. I want to be clear. That's when Ernie jumped in, which I don't blame him. I just want to be clear, though. Okay, I'm not.
Be clear. I got something I got to add.
Well, write it down on a piece of paper there.
I did. Go.
Good. Is that crypto? I am not saying that crypto is a scam, that you're wasting your money on it. It's still an experiment. We get it. If anything, probably the safe view is you're looking at regular commodities and you're looking at crypto. We'll just keep it simple so we don't get into that bitching contest back and forth. But I only brought it up because when someone puts that much money in at one time, it's a little interesting to see what they're saying. Also, that he's kind of new, and I think Ernie could probably agree, and many of you, is that when people finally get, I guess, economically red-pilled, join the Austrian school to some degree, when they finally look at when they look at the debt clock and they see it differently and they see the time bomb that we've all been seeing for a while, it's like they go through sometimes that panic. It's also a little bit religious. Like it's kind of like when someone suddenly finds God for the first time in life, from an atheist and a hater, and then you find God. All of a sudden, those are the people that are proselytizing the most. They have all this renewed energy to start knocking on doors. So, I'm starting to see that again now. I saw that in 2008, 2010. A lot of it, from Dr. Paul, woke up a lot of people and suddenly, gave us the energy to go out and try to warn other people. But we're going to start seeing round 2 or 3 now. And this gentleman who bought $1 billion in silver just kind of reminded me that his urgency and how his conversion. But anyway, so we're in stage 2 now of the smart money coming in, which kind of means that we are in the mix of this change now. Then, of course, stage 3 would be when the retail investors come in. And the retail investors are when what we were talking about, you see the gold spinners, outside. And when you see grandma and you send in your gold, then it's stage 3. And if you don't have your stuff by then, the off-dollar commodities then you kind of missed, obviously, the big run-up. And once I see the gold spinners, Ernie, that's the time when I start to think about maybe selling certain positions. Now, it's not investment advice to people, but that's the ultimate canary in the coal mine. One last point on the economics, and I'll throw it back to you here, is that I said now that we can see the tsunami kind of cresting, we kind of see it now, and it seems like this will be it'll be a stagflation form. We didn't know what form of an economic, collapse, whatever you want to call it, or reset, but it looks like it'll be stagflation. It seems that's the most obvious. And again, guys, some of you are probably economists and know more than me with this, but if you think otherwise, then chime into the show. But basically, you're having stagnant economic growth or decreased economic growth. You have increased inflation and then increased unemployment, where each of them leads into the next, right? And that's kind of the treacherous loop. Is the economy slows down, inflation, which technically goes in more dollars, which of course our country is more happy to do. Prices go up as a result of inflation, and then people can't afford it, and so they don't buy these products. So the businesses lay people off, and unemployment goes up, which means people have less money, and blah, blah, blah. It goes into a cycle. And policymakers have a real problem with that, because how do you get out of that? It's like an economic death spiral at that point. So that's the dilemma that Trump has. And if Trump, to Ernie's point, does not have a set philosophy like Ron Paul does about economics, then what will he do aside from just fire the next guy and put someone else in charge? I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's already trying to bully the Fed right now. And so the question I have, and I don't have an answer, I'm not giving economic advice or such, but it sounds like that we are going to have a correction, not the crash, in my opinion, but a pretty major correction in the next few months, probably maybe in January, somewhere around there. And that's also after perhaps the next Fed meeting. It sounds like the word on the street is that they're going to decrease interest rates another quarter basis points, because Trump was pushing for, a 0.5, and they just did 0.25, and Powell was already asked, well, are you going to do it again? I think you said that earlier, Ernie. And so, they'll probably do it again in a few months, which is not going to really change anything for the economy. I don't think people are suddenly going to have money start buying homes for all the other reasons I mentioned. But, that's the theory. But when they keep lowering interest rates, it sounds like that's when the stocks were going to sell off maybe 20, 30% at least. Not the crash, but a huge correction. Now, even though a lot of the smart money seems to be pulling their money out, Buffett and all of them, they're all pulling their money out of the stocks. But yet, why is the stock market still going up? Well, you've got a bunch of normies who just are clueless about this. But one thing that I've known about, but I never really gave it enough attention, and I'm sure you guys, a lot of it, you know about it, is why would the economy why would the stock market keep going up, even when many other indicators are contrary to people throwing money into it? And a big part, I completely forgot, because I don't really have them, are the 401ks and these mutual funds. How many Joe Schmoes, working as a Dilbert somewhere in a cubicle, and they have their job, and that's fine, and nothing against that, guys. I just couldn't handle a cubicle job. That's not me or Ernie. It just couldn't. God help you if you can do that. But, you have a regular job, and you have your money every week being not siphoned, I mean, it's voluntarily, you're putting it into a 401k. So you're not even thinking about it. You're just used to
incentivized.
And yeah, exactly. And that's your so-called retirement, and your money just keeps going. And for many people who are normies, when they first set it up and you had your half-hour, 15-minute meeting with the corporate 401k guy, and you're not a money person, right? You're just a regular person with a job. And so you're like, well, all right, I'll invest in certain companies, and they have mutual funds that look enticing to normies. We got some Disney, we've got some Facebook. You like Facebook? Yeah, you work Facebook. So they do all the marquee companies that are all on the NASDAQ driving this thing, which is why, NVIDIA and all these Tesla are just so overvalued, because, they're high tech, people love tech and shiny things, and all their mutual funds are just funneling this like a balloon. You just keep pumping it every single week with paychecks. So that's a very significant part about why it's destined to keep going up without any really thinking behind it. People use their mutual funds and the stock market, which is really gambling, as their retirement. And that's a whole other story how we got to all of that. But it looks like when you have a straight up arrow of what the Dow and the NASDAQ has been doing, history proves you're going to have a pullback. And according to the numbers people, it's looking like a 20 to 30% major correction, and probably around January-ish. Again, this is not investment advice to anybody. It's just, it looks like that's, a very likelihood. And so the question is what do you do with your monies or stocks? Now, one theory, of course, I think is very strategic, is like a lot of the big money doing. You just pull your money out of your stocks, wait a few months, and then when it goes down 30%, just rebuy all of your positions. I mean, that kind of makes sense, if you're going to rebuy it at all. My question, though, is, and I don't have an answer for this, is what would happen with the mining stocks? You see, we're not at the retail investor stage. We're still at the beginning of the so-called smart money. I put them in quotes there. They're kind of new to the party. So, what would happen when interest rates go down, right? From our point of view, that means the economy's weak. It means that the Fed is saying, uncle, or in this case, uncle because of Trump, threatened them, but putting that aside, lowering interest rates just shows that the weightlifter at the circus is proving that he just can't lift it anymore. He's showing his age, and he drops it, right? So to me, that's what it means. So that is a strong bullish figure or indicator for commodities, for getting off the dollar. You would think that gold stocks, as an example, mining stocks, would shoot up when interest rates go down. That's in theory, because we see where this is probably going to go. But what will happen, because if the whole stock market goes down 20, 30%, will the mining stocks go down with it just because they're stocks and the smart money does not really grasp that these are separate deals? Or will they go up when the rest go down? Again, at the end of the day, I mean, for anyone who's interested in mining stocks, Peter Schiff, I'm sure will say tomorrow, he would just say it doesn't matter. You just buy it now because it's going to go up quite a bit more, according to him. Those are his beliefs on it. And there's the old saying, don't trip over pennies on the way to making dollars. So, maybe it just doesn't matter for those of you that are not day trading about it. But to me, the only reason I'm bringing it up, again, it's not investment advice. It's just thinking about where the economy is now and what the Fed's decision yesterday is setting up. So, when you can kind of get a sense that now we can see the tsunami and how this is going to play out, I have found that personally, Ernie, very helpful for the things that I've been doing, because now it's not just this mystery where, any day you wake up and the stock market crashes and everything's gone. It looks like that's not going to be happening for a bunch of reasons, again, I won't go into, but I'm more confidence it's going to be a slower process that we can maneuver our way through. Any thoughts on that? Did you agree with that, or you still think there's a good possibility of an overall crash?
Crash. It's going to be Monday.
Really?
It doesn't. This is when I say, not this Monday. Well, I don't know, maybe this one. The point that I'm always making, it won't happen all at overnight, but it will happen overnight. I keep saying that, and people, what the hell are you talking about? You can see all of this. You see it coming. There's always an overnight. There's always a bank holiday on, Friday over the weekend. Maybe they'll open on Monday, beg us to let us have access to your new purple money or whatever the hell. They're bank holidays, man. They're going to do it because they can. And you totally agreed when you opened it. I totally agreed. Sign here, I totally agree. Change the bank, totally agree. Get correct, totally agree. I totally agree. Did you read it? Nah, totally agreed. So what I was going to interject into this conversation as you went on this, because I thought it was important to get this in there. This has happened before. When they did the MERS, it was mortgage electronic recording, whatever the hell it was, is the way that you would buy property is you had the mortgage and you had the deed, and they were supposed to be intertwined. If you paid off the mortgage, then you got the deed, okay? When the banks, they actually physically give it to you, okay, it's yours now, peace. So they'd have mortgage burning parties back in the day and so on. That was like a big deal. Paid off your house. Well, to do that, anytime that these banks kept changing ownership, they were through the 7 to 11 round in there in the 2000s, they were just buying and selling, bank this, that, merge, acquisition, taken over, bankrupt, whatever the hell was going on. And people, it was very confusing. They were making payments to one bank that didn't own it anymore, and they're foreclosing on the other one. Hell, they were foreclosing on people that hadn't paid off. It was a mess. And the reason is because they had separated that county recorder documentation that provides for the enforcement of property rights and ownership by whoever gave the loan, the mortgage, that held it, it was paid off, whatever. So they go and they said, to make a change in ownership and who had the money owed them and who lived there and all that stuff, you had to go through the county recorder's office and change all the paperwork that you signed when you bought it. Well, they didn't want to do that. That's like paperwork. It takes time and expense, and depending on the state, like California, they make boatloads of money. Then they would come in and they say, hey, they're not paying me. Go send the constable and go foreclose on and get the house. And they go, well, we don't have a record of you having bought. What the hell? And you don't have any property right because you didn't do it right. And there was a law that went all the way to the Ninth Circuit to be enforced, and they go, we're just not going to enforce it because it wouldn't be prudent at this juncture. And what it was is if you ever did this, if you ever separated the refinanced it or did something, bought it without doing the paperwork, whoever was living there owned it. Boom, done. That's your punishment. You screwed with the system the way it was. They go, whoa, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. So to get all the attorney generals in the 50 states, and there were holdouts until there weren't and whatever, that they would go, look, the banks, we will make you whole and pay off and whatever, and you get a chunk of billions of something. So if you'll just go and redo everything, and we'll just say you did, and then enforce the property rights of the last guy that says the bank that held the mortgage. So it was a payoff. And this was, people knew what was going on. They could see it was, you know, a lot of this corruption that's going on now, same kind of crap with Katie Hobbs and the governor there, you know, just crap. You know, you just change names on, doing different stuff. So then you go, okay, why did they do this? What was the reasoning? Well, it was in The Big Short when you're talking about tranches of groups of mortgages. You had the AAA, the B, the C. Well, then they would just take all of them, kind of mix them together. And what they were saying, they go, you know what's going to happen? By mixing these together, the C's are going to go. People are just not going to be making payments. They're going to bring the entire thing down because they had mixed them. How did they mix them? This is what they never really focused on. We were covering this for months. We were going, man, I need to understand what the hell. This is what they did. They took and they turned, instead of an individual ownership, you know, that you have in a home, and the only person that could buy and sell, soon you're up on your payments, was the person that had the contract, the deal that they owned the house. Well, we want the banks to be able to buy and sell the mortgage. Because when you got the loan, they create the loan, and then that bank sold it immediately to somebody else. Anyway, they got all their commissions and whatever and sold it to somebody else and then sold it to someone. It was a big, you know, like Patrick Byrne would say, a pig's breakfast. Everybody's making money on commissions and not really adding anything to it. So what they did is they go, all right, we're going to create a number that can be traded. That's what MERS was about. Instead of saying Bank of America or Chase or Citibank or whatever, Silicon Valley Bank or whatever, they just called it MERS, Mortgage Exchange Electronic Recording Service, or whatever it was. When they did that, then you had its own side market. There was a little side hustle there going on. They were changing ownership, who owned this number that was outside of the county recorder. So when you go, hey, you know, enforce our property right, hey, you did it wrong. That's not how we do it. Life sucks for you. Get your own damn sheriff constable to go out and kick them out. So then that finally got settled and so on. But it demonstrated what they wanted to do, what they were trying to do on the sly, what they kind of, you know, behind the scenes, kind of secretive, we just made it up as we went along. They were able to trade mortgages like equities or commodities. They just created mortgage-backed securities or whatever the hell they're calling them, but they had to lie. They had to just make it its own thing over here that the banks themselves were buying and selling without changing the actual recorded documents at the county level. This is how I understand it. Now, man, it was freaking spaghetti crap as we went through this. So now they got to do it right, I get, but they keep creating. They got mortgage-backed security. They just call it something else, made it legal, did something else. Here it comes. Here it comes. Now, what if people could do this? What if you could bypass all this SEC crap? You know, you have to invest in a company or a new idea or a new innovation that you can just do it. How? Where? Tokenization on a blockchain. That grandma shoeshine box kid, everybody gets to go out and buy some of that. Give me 17 cents on Bitcoin, you know, that kind of crap. So that you can create whatever financial instrument that you can invest in something that has been tokenized that people get to have their say. Well, the only way that people can do that, and if they, well, in the market you miss out all the, you know, the good stuff or the new thing coming on, and kind of, well, that's assuming you can even do it. You have these young families and kids and coming out of college. Yeah, this professor and this new program that they're doing and this startup that's coming out of the University of fill in the blank of technology of whatever. I'd like, yeah, you're not allowed. You got to go venture capital of someone, of something, of somebody else. And I'm going, you sons of bitches, man. That's not a free market. Not even close. So I'm looking at this one thing that has kind of caught my eye. I'll just throw this out there just so I'm on record. God, what do they call them? Organoids, I think. What it is they have that using actual brain tissue that they can grow from stem cells or whatever, actual neuron brain interfacing with silicon, and kind of all of a sudden they're going, holy crap. And then they can mimic it, and also the way that they create neural networks using silicon. And so it's brain, because the brain uses like 100th or 1,000th of the energy to do enormous amounts of processing. So, I don't need a nuclear power plant to run my brain. It operates on like 40 watts, 30, 40 watts or something like that. Woo, I'm really thinking maybe 100 watts. It's, a half a light bulb. But it makes up about 30% of the calories a human body consumes goes to their brain. There's a lot of automated stuff that's going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of things, when you're thinking, doing brain, the human brain takes up, which is why omnivore was an important thing. Cooking was an important thing. We were able to consume the amount of calories and nutrition, especially from meat and cooked meat, that would be able to process faster than us being a gorilla silverback sitting there eating 8 hours a day on freaking whatever.
And by the way, Ernie, I have to just chime in. And on top of that, we only apparently use the most recent scans. The most recent scans that we only use 15 to 20% of our brain. So that shows you just how efficient it is. Yeah.
So the organoids, they're talking about is their different tissues, whatever. The point is I'm going, wow, if they could make chips processing more human brain-like, or, oh my God, they're actually using human brain tissue, that they are able to do this and they don't need a nuclear power plant at the data center. They don't need to have the supercooling of the whatever and evaporative water of the whatever. Their brain tissue. I remember seeing in the 70s, 80s as a kid, young man, there was a series about in the future and society had collapsed, but what was left over was some tech, and there were chimpanzees with their brains hooked into some satellite that was the information running the background, kind of like the Star Trek Spock's brain thing. They took his brain to run the society because their other brain went out or something. And so I'm thinking of that. I'm going, this is not like a new thought, certainly with science fiction. And could it be science fiction? I don't know. Can they? Well, guess what? And they are. So if you could have a way to process ones and zeros, to skip to the end on calculation or whatever the hell, and you use biology, which is gazillions of years, intelligent design of a God thing of whatever, that you have the most efficient use of processing information, why would you think they wouldn't look to that as a solution? In fact, they are. So I go, you know what? I want to see where I can invest in that. Barring the ethical considerations and whatever. I'm going, is this a market? Is there an index? Is there a group of companies around the world consolidated into derivative that I get to bet on that? Can I? No! You're not allowed. That's into it. I'm going, you guys are killing me. So here we come with tokenization of everything. When people talk about that, they're not really talking about, and tomorrow, before we have Peter Schiff on, Pavel, he's one of the lead developers. I think he's the guy that had the core tech behind Monero, and it went to Xano. So he went to Xano, and they're developing that while we're pushing Xano. But before I get all super duper, go and buy the whole boatload of Xano, I want to talk to the developer, one of the primary guys. I'll explain it to me. And the tokenization of everything, what that allows, and I don't even think you need government permit. Of course, they'll bitch and whine and moan like they always do. But can people from their phone invest in whatever the hell they want if it's represented by a blockchain token? Can they? How does that manifest itself in the market? Where do you have the physical kind of ownership of somebody that's enforced my property right of gimme and I get to sell in the exchange of something? Where's that?
Right.
Once they make it to where you're not having to be incentivized at your employer to put in your 3, 5, 6% to max out the contribution that's tax deferred by the company, of course, blah, 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 to incentivize you putting all your money into everybody all in now, it's ours now, it's all gone. When I can do it myself, the masses, this is what Robin Hood thing was all about. They were coming together and all these kids and people, they're just, they're trying to destroy these companies and selling short, and they would go in and do it and suck out all their money for doing it. The people, this enormous mass of money that is sitting there in these retirement funds, they want to do the MERS thing. They want to be able to tokenize, take that, put it in, and it's ours now. But they never want the common people to be able to do the trade themselves without intervention or a third party. That is where the battle is. And that is why precious metals are doing what they are. And that is why they want to manipulate precious metals and make it to where it's so manipulated and suppressed that they can hold it off, because once everybody goes into the tokenization, unless it's all controlled in SEC and you got a phone home, it's like putting up an Android app on Google Play. It's got to meet criteria to be able to use and phone home kind of crap, so I wouldn't trust that. But that is why I believe that they are freaked about people getting precious metals in the form of gold, silver, because then it's off of their scope, their radar, their control. So when a guy comes in and goes, $1 billion, getting silver, yeah, and where you putting it? Got it on you? Where is it physically stored? That's what it's always going to come down to. So I am seeing, just FYI, because I've seen it happen before. From a layman, I don't understand. I don't have a bunch in. I don't have a dog and don't care. I just keep buying silver because I'm too stupid to know better, and it seems like a very safe bet. And because it's been manipulated so much, where it's normally throughout history 15, 16 to 1 on gold, and now it's like, gazillion to 1, which means silver has been manipulated so it's going to freaking explode. And when it does, they'll pass a law. You're not allowed. They'll suppress. They'll do something, because that's what those do. They got to take it. You got to turn it in for the war effort. Enormous amounts of silver by the U.S. government was for the Manhattan Project because they needed it for where they needed it. So this is so obvious to me of what's happening, and it means that the dollar is going away, or certainly going to get inflated out of existence, which may be the plan to do away with the $38 trillion debt. So many forces are at play here. The solution, occupytheland.org.
Yeah.
Frank?
Yeah. Well, let's get back to Charlie Kirk. So I didn't mention at the beginning of the show, you guys did get some pictures. For what it's worth, well, most of you or many of you are outside of Arizona. My better half, I mentioned last week, has been very affected by the death of Charlie Kirk. Not that I usually bring her up on the show, but I do. Many of us, we've been sort of ahead of the curve with a lot of this for many years or decades. We knew that civil unrest would occur, coincide with the economy going down. Just many of these. Of course, we didn't know names like Obama or Trump or any of this. It's just you just know it's going to play out in a certain way, different actors. But many of us also, we tend to be only the so-called prophets on our own land, and it's only actually. You're a prophet, but not in your own land, as the saying goes. And so for many of us, we've been the outcasts, doom and gloomers, the usual from our friends and family. But, we're seeing the change. More and more normies are waking up. This is, in some ways, the genesis of where the Trump report came from, was when I started to see Sean Hannity, which Ernie still thinks was anti-Trump. But, we won't go to that debate again. But Sean Hannity and Judge
Anti
Judy.
a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. Fox News, it was fascinating to watch Fox News, choose or at least start to defend Donald Trump when no one else would. And I'm not saying this was, Fox News edict, because they were certainly establishment. But I found it fascinating that it was the commentators that seemed to have more of the pulse of the people. And I was brought up Sean Hannity as a perfect example, because Rush Limbaugh, back in his day, he saw this immediately because he spoke to the people. He didn't have a Fox News show. About once a year or two, special guest star Rush Limbaugh, and he would drop on Fox just once a year just to say hi. They would be begging him complete. But he wanted to stay out of that orbit and stay with the people. That's why he had such a bond. And this nationalist populist movement that was just ready to explode. And Rush was always trying to keep the peace between the establishment and the populace. And I think or the nationalists. And I think he saw that its day was going to be coming. And that's why he tried not to get into choosing candidates or such. And, I'm no ditto head about it, but we have to at least acknowledge his role in a lot of this for the conservative wing. But Sean Hannity, always riding the coattails of Rush Limbaugh, he at least was in a unique position because he was both on the radio and on television. So he was under with all the shackles like Tucker Carlson had, being at Fox News, while at the same time he was listening to the people every day. So Sean really was a great canary. I always like the canary in coal mines. I know I overuse that, but there's just certain indicators that I use to magnify what else is going on. But when I saw Sean, on Fox, he almost had to choose. I'm going to go with the Mitt Romney type establishment candidate. Marco Rubio they were trying to push, right? Or Jeb Bush. Remember, Jeb Bush at the time was really their big pony. And yet Sean Hannity's going, it's Trump, and he knew he would probably lose his credibility on his show, and he made a lot more money on his radio show than the TV show. So anyway, that to me was a nice barometer. But anyway, I'm watching my wife, and she, like many of your family and friends, I think, were really affected by this. And this concept of who picks up the mic, which you're seeing everywhere now, is not just about who picks up after Charlie Kirk. It's like Ernie said earlier, it's you. It's the individual. It's the person who, for the last, their whole lives, refused to comment back, let's say on Facebook, against some, leftist friends who've gone off the rocker. Now, most of us are not on Fascist Book, including myself. But it just proves the point, though, or it makes the point. Why is it that the left could sit there and just say, you're a racist and a bigot and whatever, and then that men are women and women are men, say whatever they want, George Floyd, whatever it might be, and yet it was only loud voices, Alex Jones, Ernest Hancock, myself, most of the people who've been on this show and others, podcasters, there's many of us in this orbit, but where we tend to be kind of opinionated, loud people who just let's say we've always been a bit different and been calling this stuff out. But the most frustrating thing I have found is how many of our friends and family refused. They were afraid to put a Trump sign outside. For those of you that vote, not to get into that. They were afraid to comment back on a Facebook post or anywhere. And it's that silence that they said, oh, well, we're just being tolerant. Is it tolerance or is it fear? And in any case, you're going to get more of that behavior that you're allowing to occur, right? It's basic Dr. Phil logic, right? So to see now people who have never picked up that mic, so to speak, and spoke back, I'm in the last week I've seen transformations in people, my wife included. Anyway, certainly a turning point. So I heard that there was a memorial down in Phoenix. We'll talk about the big memorial that's happening here on Sunday. President Trump, Vice President Vance. It's going to be a who's who.
Cardinal Football Stadium.
Coming down here at the football stadium. It's probably going to be the largest, quote, unofficial Trump rally. I mean, it's not about Trump, but it's going to be, a very solemn type of Trump rally without it being about Trump, I'm sure. But it's going,
maybe not so solid.
Man, so subtle. I did a great job. We shall see. But before we get into that, though, before it started, it was, after the shooting, the day of, people went down to the Turning Point USA headquarters, which, it's funny, I've driven by that area a million times, didn't even know where it was. Did you happen to know where it is, Ernie? Well, actually, you were there. You were there with Tim Pool when you met Tim Pool there. So Turning Point headquarters for Arizona people is right by the Arizona Mills Mall. It's like across the highway area where the Fry's Electronics used to be. So It's in that shopping center where Rustler's Roost. For those of you who know the area, it's a real touristy trap restaurant. It's been around for decades on top of a mountain. And you could get rattlesnake. And all the tourists come to town and get rattlesnake and people with
alligator and shark.
Yeah, alligator. Yeah, it's like the old 70s, 60s kind of like touristy place for Western outsiders. But anyway.
They cut your tie off.
Yeah, exactly. They cut the tie off. Imagine trying that today, all the lawsuits. But anyway, it's right in that area. I had no idea. So we decided to go down. I think it was going to be good for my wife. She thanked me about it. I didn't realize how much was pent up of her, her grief of what's happened. I mean, she's watched so many of these videos, and they really get to know Charlie. They feel like they know him personally after just the way he speaks and how many hours they've listened. Ernie and I and a lot of our audience, we certainly know of Charlie Kirk, but it wasn't like we watched his videos and we already get it. We've been acting and feeling that way since we were in our teens. But it's a transitioning for people, dare I use that term. But we went down. Just a few thoughts on the memorial. It was very large. It took up an entire length of a street. They had cops on either side blocking it off. I asked one of the security guys for Turning Point that was blocking people getting to the front doors. He said that there were just a few knuckleheads that were around, about every day. Maybe one or two people show up, but they get quickly turned away. You can see also the layers of the flowers and the cards. I mean, I sent some pictures to Ernie, and they are. It's just deep. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be showing them again if it wasn't for the computer froze up. But.
So it was like
the pictures described. They were very. Wide and deep. A lot of people,
like 15, 20 foot deep.
And then they had one that we did at University of Utah where the shooting was, and that is just blank. I mean, because they live in their bubble, the far fringe left, not even say left, but I mean, these guys that have been promoted and subsidized and so on, they don't live in the real world. They had no clue this would happen. Right. It was not a chance. And they are flabbergasted, I'm sure.
No, you're completely correct. That's what they don't realize. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little, but it's like more and more I can see how Charlie Kirk's death is analogous to Dr. Martin Luther King's death. At the time, he was a speaker. He was an activist. He was a troublemaker. He was someone that a lot of people did not agree with. And when he died, the response, I think a lot of white people did not quite understand what was brewing underneath.
But a lot did.
Well, many did, I'm sure, in the areas where the tension was. But like up north, I remember like in the Philly area and New York, a lot of the white suburbs, they really were not.
And I'm from Florida.
They were shocked about what happened in the riots that occurred afterwards when he was killed. This is I'm not trying to be funny, but I didn't live through it. But my first experience or hearing about it, this is way bizarre on the Trump Report, was the Jeffersons television show. And by the way, I was a big fan. George Jefferson and Wheezy. It was one of my favorite shows growing up. But they did a very solemn episode of the flashback of when Dr. King died and just the reactions and people rioting. And it was on the Jeffersons. I actually learned about it. But in any case, I could imagine. Yeah, I can imagine the similar things being said at the time, like white people at the time who were obviously didn't feel that they had a bone in the fight, or people saying, well, he had it coming, right? He had it coming. I remember hearing some old relatives in the day that he was riling up the blacks. He was riling up the Negroes. And so, which from their point of view, he was. And he was bringing people out and forming a coalition, and he looked dangerous, and he was just asking for it, right? I remember hearing
when he was advocating for peace in Vietnam. That flipped somebody's switch.
And so isn't it interesting that you can use those comments that people said against or about Dr. King in its day, and it sounds eerily similar to what you're hearing today, which is
the same threat.
It's the same, exactly same threat, and it was out of speaking. It was talking, and as we can all see, I mean, more and more, is that you turn to violence when the conversation can't continue, and often it happens when one side basically does not have an argument. One side has truth, and the other side cannot argue with it anymore, and it falls apart. You know, I was talking to my better half about it, and we're having it's been a lot of conversations, Ernie, not to bring it all up on the show. But I have to say, I feel like we're at a point now where more and more Democrats are getting red-pilled, or at least cold water is being flashed on them. Tim Pool mentioned, I didn't watch the video yet, but he had a tagline that more like Democrats are, leaving the party in droves over just the last week. That there's been a marked increase of people saying, enough, I can't go along with this as far as the response of what happened. I think, seeing that Trump is not just rounding everybody up and shooting people in pistol squads and all the fear-mongering, I think they're starting to see their party for what it is. I told you after the election that much of what I'm intrigued about is what the Democrat Party, or whatever you call it, is going to do, the fracturing, the reorganization, and I think the so-called red pilling of many moderate Democrats that have to decide. Heck, the Piers Morgan show, which I watched just for entertainment value, they had like two liberals,
something
and two
to throw your
conservatives.
popcorn at.
Yeah, really. They had that guy Destiny, who I think is near sociopath. He's probably on drugs. The guy's too much Adderall. He probably needs to take more. But Destiny was basically making the same point. This guy deserved it, on and on. The guy's just a true crazy leftist. And then you had Anna Kasparian, right, who is the Young Turks, who starts slowly becoming red-pilled over time. She was just tearing the guy apart. It was like a leftist on top of a leftist. And all the other guests just kind of shut up and just said, you know what, we don't have to add to this. And you're watching right there on his show. It was amazing fireworks, great ratings. But to watch a left Democrat becoming more moderate and now just destroying him or exposing what the Dems or the left has turned into. So anyway, so you're seeing that to such a degree. I don't think they understand what they woke up. But anyway, let me move on to the other part. Is Antifa, what is it, the response? So what's the response now, or what should the response be? And I'm really curious your thoughts on it. But it's like, so now the response. You have Pam Bondi, who is now saying that, if you don't put signs up in your Office Max or whatever, that's considered hate speech. Now, she is an idiot. She also, I think, is corrupt, in my personal opinion, just how she's handled Epstein alone. And I won't even bring it up much this week because, we have to finish up the show in a bit. But we had Kash Patel getting grilled by Congress just a few days ago. And, he did a fairly decent job for entertainment value going back and forth. It was just politicized. But when it came to Epstein, of all people, I can't believe I was rooting for Schiff. What's his name? Adam Schiff. I mean, the guy, he sounds like an antisocial to me, and yet here I am rooting for him. He was the only person pushing back against Kash Patel about Epstein. And, all of a sudden Kash just turns into lying mode over it. Like, well, just a distraction from all the great things the FBI is doing. We're amazing. He just turned into Donald Trump right there on the chair. So,
yeah, there's
again,
something going on.
There's something going on, and I promise, for me, I'll be nice. I'm not going to go down my Epstein rant this time, but I did bring it up, and I will bring it up every week, as I promised the audience, to your chagrin. But anyway, that's what wound up happening, and Pam Bondi, who should be fired for that alone, she is now going back to this artificial hate speech rule that is undermining what our side, or what moderate conservatives, libertarians have been saying all along. We can't go down this path of regulated speech, and she's adding to it. So she's horrendous. Then you have Donald Trump now, I think it was today or yesterday, announcing that Antifa will now be considered a terrorist group, but not just any terrorist group, an international terrorist group, because Antifa has branches in other countries. So technically it qualifies as an international terrorist group. So what does that lead into? Antifa likes to think of themselves as jackalope, which is no one's in charge. Although sometimes there are people in charge.
If you demonstrate a lineage of money to illegal violent action, that's like the definition of RICO. I mean, you know,
Right.
yeah. So they're
Soros.
they're probably way the open society stuff that they're way more susceptible to state action than most people think. But my problem has been the FCC chair or the guy Trump administration comes out on. I had to go look for it to be sure that it actually happened that way. I just he did not say state action. He did not come out and say that we're going to have an effect on your FCC license or your thing. You don't get rid of. Yes, he did.
Yep.
He threatened state action on free speech. I'm going, you dumb sons of bitches. That is that you know.
I just have to mention that. So it's Kimmel. So we have the FCC kicking off Kimmel, as disgusting as that guy is. But you know, the ratings in the free market should take care of itself. But he's adding, So this, look, the Kimmel.
It's like they wanted an excuse.
Antifa. This in many ways is going to be a wake-up call to them, the people who have nothing to lose, who are just waiting. I mean, they call themselves anti-fascist, which is a play on words. I mean, they're the ones doing it, but it's a nice psychological game. But therefore, they're loving this. The guy that they've called a Nazi now is going to call them a domestic or an international terrorist group, and then round up these poor innocent people expressing themselves, having mostly peaceful protests, and the rest. And the way the left is already shielding their audience from the facts, just like what Kimmel was accused of doing himself. But if they do that, where does Antifa go from here?
It's why we have to have principles.
The war is on. And now you're going to start having true, more shootings, more whatever. People feel more unsafe. And then you have a guy like Trump, who, if he's not run or follows a philosophy, I'm giving credit to Ernie over this part of it. Well, then all he knows is, what do I need to do to keep America upright as much as possible? Instead of a set of principles that you stick to regardless, it is tempting to just say, look, the ship's going down. Everyone for themselves to a certain degree. We just have to make this. We need to fix it, and whatever I see, every time there's a leak somewhere, you just put up some spackle to try to stop it. So that's where I think he's going to go. It's just that now you start that spiraling down. It's like the spiraling of the international currencies, as they say, the race to the bottom. I feel it's going to be the opposite, in a sense, is the race towards authoritarianism on both sides. And everything Trump does he think or not realize that the next administration is going to use the same thing against people? It's just, at the end of the day, we can blame the left for starting this.
That's what he's being incentivized to do.
They're the ones that said, you're going to lose your job, and if you talked about the vaccine, or if you questioned or you said the word China about the virus. This wasn't that long ago, people. If you questioned about the election, the big lie, you'd lose your job and be deplatformed. They've been doing this for so long, but their side either didn't believe it, or if they did hear it, they thought it was justified. Which gets to the last point on this round here of me wrapping. Last point is what was by allowing them to continue doing this. And when I say allow, I know that's a charged word, especially on this show. What do I mean by allowed? Well, culture. We'll just say culturally allowed. I'm not saying it with guns to tell them you can't say something, but by the silent majority being, silent, all right? And the culture, which is why I always bring it up. If you don't think there's a culture, you won't defend your culture, and you say, multiculturalism, I don't want to be a racist, I want to be tolerant, whatever that means. And then suddenly, the whole house is dividing apart. But I lost my train of thought. Anyway, let me turn back to you, and I'll get my other thought here. But I just think that this escalation is something that I don't know if we can put that genie back once it begins, which it already has. So what do you think Trump's role should be? Do you think he just doesn't respond and just say, hey, let everyone just do what they want? We're not going to be them. I definitely would agree, but it's a tough political position.
No, it's not. It's the principles of Merca. He's up there. I watched his they have the big dinner and the gold-plated everything of the big table in the palace of, Trump and Charles and accoutrement, don't care. And he's going, oh, yeah, and the British, and you guys are such a bastion of freedom and the beginning of freedom and the speech of freedom, and he's just freaking, going down on Charles' knob. I mean, I was like, what the hell? He's just trying to be polite and doing, I'm so honored to have been, it's only the second president that's ever got this kind of, butt kissing ever of I'm Trump. So whatever. I just don't care. That's your standard. This is what makes you happy. Is there something else that you're trying to do? Are you negotiating something else? You're trying to get a peace. Something. What is it that he's doing? And he's trying to kill him with kindness, or come in from the side, or if you do this, we promise and pinky swear we'll do this other thing you want, or there's something else going on. But you always have these little tidbits that kind of, just circumstances, coincidences, things that I'm looking for the memes. For what? I don't know, for everything. One meme that I got to pull up here to see if it's a thing. Charlie Kirk's middle name is what?
Jay, I believe. Something.
Charles James Kirk. James Kirk.
Is it really James?
Yeah. So I'm just going, oh, here we go, man. I got Captain James T. Kirk. This is, I'm looking, I haven't seen the memes that's going to go into the future, yet. And, I'll take a look at it. They'll come eventually, because James Kirk, are you kidding me? I mean, his parents obviously, were fans. But this is so obvious of what I believe is going to happen. And it's on a much larger macro scale than revenge or retaliation or, comeuppance or ha-ha or I, told you. So that's why there's not going to be any violence. It's not like Martin Luther King, there's lots of violence and policies and so on succumb to this kind of Antifa. They already know how to do it. Marxist left, kind of the Soviets, the Chinese, the communists, the socialists, or whatever. This is part of their playbook. This has been going on since forever, certainly since World War II. Hell, even before that. There was a movie with George Hamilton, I think it was. It was called Reds. And it was, panned mostly because it was so freaking long. You had to have an intermission. It was one of those 3-4 hour movie things at the theater. And it was all about, supporters of communism in America. Now, of course, they put in a little drama. It was just an excuse to, be able to talk about communism in America. But then you get the McCarthy trials and you go through. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't true. There's an infiltration at every level of because they can. How big a government agencies do we need? How big a budget? How many people do we got to employ? How many? Then you get rid of USAID and they freak out because that was how they're getting funded. And plus all the other budget line items were being controlled with our money and the debt that they're creating and all that. Seriously? So I look at this whole thing. They're expecting what happens when it happens to the left. To the point, George Floyd. That's your role model? He gets a wall? They had to pay. They put a big giant mural, the memorial to George Floyd, and God hit it with a lightning bolt and destroyed the wall. I'm like, whoa, all right. Well, there's a message.
Or anything with George Floyd, as I was saying to my wife the other day, I said, the problem with Charlie Kirk and the reason people didn't riot is he wasn't important enough. If Charlie Kirk was doing illicit drugs and ripping people off and doing bans checks and, was some kind of druggy guy, I mean, then he's worthy of a riot. Right? And that's the question. Why is it Charlie Kirk meant so much to so many people on this side and there wasn't even mostly peaceful protests? Right? But yet, right. So what does it take? I mean, that in itself, I think, is the dichotomy that moderates are starting to see.
A mural of George Floyd in Toledo, Ohio, was destroyed in July 21 after being struck by lightning, which caused a section of the brick wall to collapse. I remember they made a big deal, boom, and I go, that's damn. I mean, that's like bad karma. So then you're looking at what's going on now, and there's no riots in the street. There's no looting, burning, tearing down. That's not happening. But you know that the Antifa, BLM, left side progressive, purple hair nose ring people, alphabet soup, has been anticipating that would happen.
Yep.
Wanted it to happen, hoping it would happen. They didn't realize what really happens when you have someone that was they call Christ the Prince of Peace. There's going to be, Trump is going to give him the posthumously the United States Medal of Freedom, and I can think of few people that are deserving. And why? Was it because he's so well versed in the Bible, that he was so articulate in espousing political philosophies and so on? Was it because? It was because he went to the belly of the beast, and that he was trying to save and influence one mind at a time in peaceful dialogue. That was what was missing. That was what was not emphasized, and they sure as hell were in fear. And of professors. And these guys are, a lot of them unhinged, man. They were doing physical violence on people. It's just, wow.
Well,
they expected, let me finish. They expected the conservatives, the Christians, the right, just regular people to react violently. And that's not the emotion. It wasn't hate. It was more like pity for these people, sadness of the situations. But what are you going to threaten Charlie James Kirk with? Heaven? I mean, he went out, the way. Damn, this is.
So I heard some people on the left, some people through my wife's Facebook and some others, commenting like, well, he kind of deserved it and he was asking for it, and there's been some reach out about it wasn't not even any sympathy.
He deserved praise.
Right. And they were saying that the reason he deserved it, was asking for it, is that it wasn't just, free speech. He was what you just said. The way you worded it was trying to free or save one mind at a time. Well, that's how they saw it too. They saw it though as converting, just a little bit different. To them, they're like, well, no wonder people are upset. He's trying to convert them. And then the question is, I throw to all of you, the first thing should come up is, and this is the core of the issue, convert to what? It's not like we're converting to some unknown religion or philosophy. It's this is what they understand. They now are this new culture, this new philosophy there of using pronouns and they, thems and men and women's bathrooms and all these changes, and they still can't quite grasp that it's not that Charlie Kirk is converting them to something else. They're the ones that have converted. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just taking opinion out for a minute. Forget about whether maybe men should be allowed in women's bathrooms. I mean, perhaps, you put enough lipstick on a pig, then you're allowed in a women's bathroom. Let's just say that's where the future is going to be. Okay, fine. But just come down to brass tacks. Which is, what do you expect when we have not had men in women's bathrooms for, I don't know, since before the founding of this country, and every party, not just both parties, every party, whether it's the Green Party, the Life, Liberty and Happiness Party, the Rent's Too Damn High Party, the Libertarian Party, remember Rent's Too Damn High, all of this. So everyone has agreed, until recently, in the last 5-8 years. And I kind of wonder why. Not just young people from colleges who somehow think that that's normal for that type of behavior, but older people in their 50s, 60s, whatever, an old senior Democrat. It's almost like that they have amnesia about where this country's been. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't change to it. Maybe that is progress. and I'm trying, to hold back and biting my lip completely saying that. But it's the concept that if I go to Ernie's house, and Ernie's been in that house for 50 years or whatever it is, and I go to his house and just start changing the furniture around, and I start taking down his photographs, pictures, and I start putting Tangerine Dream albums up or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? You don't realize this looks good. It's a lot better than the way you had it, Ernie. I've got better room decor. Looks great. Now, it might be better than Ernie's decor, but it doesn't matter. It's like if I'm going to go in and change it, either he's going to like it, and hopefully he does, because Tangerine Dream's pretty awesome, or he's going to say, no, Frank, this is my house. I'm putting it back, all right? No offense. And he switches it back. Well, for me to turn around and call out Ernie as a Nazi and a racist and a bigot and intolerant and subhuman simply because he wouldn't agree with the changes I made to what his established decor has been like it's certifiable. I hate to sound like a teenager. But that's where this is where this is at. So when you hear these people, including older Democrats, you realize how brainwashed they are when they're like, well, we can't have Charlie Kirk sitting around saying this stuff because he's converting people. That's what I had to convert to what? I mean, I can see convert to a Buddhist. I mean, I come from a Buddhist background. Maybe that's too threatening to people, or God forbid, Jehovah's Witness or Scientology. I mean, even still, heck, they'll allow Scientologists and Buddhists and other people on some of these campuses. At least they used to. I don't know about recently, but I remember when I was in college, there was the town preacher. He showed up at the college every day. He would sit there with his little microphone. There was someone, I think, from the Jewish community, sitting there just proselytizing, talking to the young people, and that was cool. I used to hang out with them all the time. You know me, just love the little debates and hear people talk. But but that, at least that's different from the norm, and yet that's allowed. But to hear he's going to convert them, and it wasn't just Christianity. It was like the whole mindset of what? To have kids, to have a wife, to raise a family, to try to communicate with ideas. That's where we have to stop and say, God, they're afraid of conversion to what? It's the culture. It comes down to they've changed the culture and they're trying to embed it to make it seem to normalize it. And that's the danger when this new culture is normalized after how many years? I mean, you and I have been doing this crazy show for 10 years. It seems like yesterday sometimes. Maybe sometimes sounds like a million years too. But, 10 years is a long time. There's people who were, 11 years old, 12 years old when Trump got in 2016. And, now they're voting and they're in their mid-20s. That's a heck of a generational time period. And when you're young like that, every year feels like 10 years. That doesn't go by quick like when you're younger. So it's been normalized for this generation. And hopefully we're going to see that split. Charlie Kirk was a testament to that. And why he was a threat, because he was the first to really tap into and touch the belly of the beast where these conversions were happening to the left. And he was tapping back the youth. And it's been proven that the youth more and more are becoming conservative. They're conservative leaning.
If you'll let them and don't do stupid shit, as the Trump administration is, how close are they to this to really understand? Who's advising them? Charlie's not there. Charlie would have been the best person to, talk to him about. Maybe his wife, Erica, maybe somebody else, maybe Levitt, what's her name, the press secretary?
To talk to them about what? To talk to them about what?
Maybe Tucker Carlson, to understand how to not try and hijack the movement for political purposes. I've seen this before. Let me express this. There was a thing in the 90s called Promise Keepers. I think we talked about it last week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Promise Keepers was in the 90s, and it was done by a couple guys that are just, look, man, we got to take responsibility for ourselves, be a man. Be a good Christian man. Take care of your family and your children. Renew your commitment with your wife. Take care of your children, your wife, your wife. It was a big on relationship and family. And they had, and I had gone to a lot of these. There was, friends of our son, one of our sons that was at, they went to Phoenix Christian Junior Senior High from 7th to 12th grade. All four of my kids went there. And it was expensive. We had to pay we got it down to like 40% because we had a lot of contributions. We had different Christian, assistance, tuition, kind of whatever qualified, the Arizona School Choice Trust and different stuff that because people were supportive of even my crazy libertarian activism, but I couldn't do it and still afford to send my kids to private school or school them and get out of the government school system. And I made that clear to everybody. I go, no, I can't. I got to stop. I got to focus on my restaurant, focus on this, I got to make money. So I could, no, we'll take care of your kids. We'll do kind of like Mahomes and Otto. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback for Kansas City Chiefs, came out, Tucker Carlson gave $1 million, started a GoFundMe for Charlie Kirk's family. Mahomes came out and said, I got your kids covered education. Don't worry about it. Rest of their life, I got college covered, man. It's all good. So this is kind of I've experienced this kind of support for people that will, fight in a good fight. Because it's one less thing they got to do, and they can afford whatever, not a problem. But when you have the, Donna gave me, Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's widow, named new CEO and board chair of TPUSA. Okay, well, probably better than not. So this whole thing, when we had our children going through this stuff, we had a lot of great friends. They had great friends, football dads, meetings, whatever, and one of them had, he was a wealthy guy and a lot of other guys, and of course I was invited, and it was every Monday or Tuesday morning at Marie Callender's. They had a little room and so on. It was a Promise Keepers meeting. And it was just Christian brothers being all Christian-y brothers, and had a lesson, and we just talk about current events and whatever, and had breakfast, and then we're off to our whatever. It was awesome. It was in the 90s. We're going through this process, and you could see the impact it was having nationwide. They went to Washington, D.C., hundreds of thousands of people go in there, and what happens? It was a big impact on society, and the politicians try to get and hijack it. They try to, they get their little booth at all the events. They go sign up for my email dispatch if we're going to kind of communicate and give me money, vote for me. Immediately after that, the pressure was so heavy, and from Israel, the Third Reich, Israel, they had to get control of this thing. Well, the best way they knew to handle it was, we're done. Now we did our thing. We're good. Done. We got this generation. We're done. Because they knew it was going to get hijacked, or they'd be threatened or replaced one way or another. So this is what I see Turning Point USA as being. There is going to be, already is, the attempt to hijack the power, the influence of the movement to whatever political special interest, they, them, those, purpose of whatever, because you can't not. You can't just let it go. You can't leave it alone. You can't, just let it naturally, organically into people and rise up in the youth. Oh, hell no. They were pressuring Charlie Kirk. Now he's not there. What are they going to do? Who's going to be targeted? Who's going to be pressured? His wife, Erica, being a good Christian woman, she was a beauty pageant winner, super whatever, here out of Arizona. I don't know how they met, whatever, doesn't matter. But the pillow talk, just like with any husband and wife, that they, this is what I'm worried about, this is what I really think, this is what, throwing it off of them is just a feedback loop of something. And so I wouldn't trust anybody more than her, being a moral person, we're assuming, to accurately relay, at least, if not herself or believe or whatever. She wouldn't lie about, in my opinion, about what Charlie Kirk's real opinion on many things were. When they try and hijack it, that's why Candace Owen is freaking out. That's why Tucker Carlson is freaking out. They're going, no, hell no, that is not what he meant. That is not what he said. That is not what he was for and against and whatever. So this is what I'm seeing is going to happen. it is going to be influential. They're going to try and rubber band the Jello together to keep it for the 26 election cycle. But it's going to fracture more and more and more into a lot of different factions towards the same thing, just different styles, different, as it should be. They're going to try, no, you're doing it wrong. You got to come back in the fold, and we got a bigger, badder party, and we fill stadiums. That'll continue, I'm sure, because they're going to push the living shit out of that because they need it. But that's not where the real impact's going to be. It's going to be at the churches. Dream City is where he went, the one that my daughter, oldest daughter, and her family goes to. Whenever we're in town, Don and I usually go to that church. You know, that's where Charlie Kirk's from. The Scottsdale branch of Dream City is a guy that kind of started, the head pastor or something in the valley or whatever. He was really pushing for this other guy, some chief operating officer. I think it was I don't remember his name. He was a black guy that was part of whatever. And he was really pushing this guy. Yeah, you know, that you should, you know, kind of wink, wink, nod, 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 to the point of being disgusting, that this guy was the guy he wanted. Why? Why does there need to be a guy anyway? This is why I was like, nah, I don't think you're way too early even talking about that. It's got to be organic, if anything. He'll put his wife in charge and leave it alone. What are you going to do? You know, one of the apostles is going to be replacement for Jesus? Really? Really? You think really? You think you could do really? That's not how it works. Certainly not, this way. So I'm going, all right, what's going to happen? I have no idea. But it's not going to happen the way I think those think it is. They did not anticipate the restraint, or not even the compulsion, or the involuntary reaction of violence. That was not what he was about. It wasn't even a consideration for me. I mean, what are you going to do? Shoot every trans? That's why, armed queers with AR-15. We're ready for. You're assuming we even give a shit. Yeah, do you, man? We don't care. The next guy comes up, whatever. I am very satisfied with the initial response, the attitude, and the mindset of the supporters of Turning Point USA, the people involved, the tactics being used, and the focus on Generation Next. And this example of how this is done is going to do that which pisses the left off, the Democrats, the they, them, those, the world socialist, color revolution, progressive, furry gay people, okay? The alphabet soup, whatever. I'm going, what's going to piss them off more than anything is that Charlie Kirk, supporters of his peaceful interaction with Generation Next and those that just needed to have a different perspective, is that they're not going to go violent. They want them to go violent. And the longer that they don't, and the more that they... See, that's why they were trying to do, like, Kimmel's gone. What was he saying? Well, they're really trying to hide that he's one of their own and, he was a MAGA guy or whatever because he had a rifle, he had a gun, he must be MAGA. Some stupid shit. They don't even understand how stupid they look.
Right.
So, like Putin says, man, when your enemy's doing themselves harm, you let them. Just back. Whoa, you guys, you go do you. We'll just sit over here and watch. Okay? That's what's happening. I'm really interested. Go ahead and talk about your experience, and I'll share mine about going to the thing in Glendale this Sunday.
Yeah, well, not much else more to say. I mean, it was solemn. It was beautiful for what it can be. It was the first time me seeing the Turning Point buildings. It's actually, you walk through these gates, and there are two buildings, one on the left, one on the right. They're mirror images of each other. They have different names for them from people who donated. I think one, I could be wrong, but I think one of the buildings is probably the executive building for all the organization, and the other building was for the students. Also, I was honestly surprised when I looked where it was at. that it was by Arizona Mills, because for some reason, I don't know why, I kept thinking it was around Fountain Hills, which I know is, I think, what's where he lives. But I thought Turning Point was around Fountain Hills. But it makes a lot of sense where it is, because it's
by
really
ASU.
on the border of Tempe, which is ASU and all of the students. So I don't know, it
To
shows
give
you how
people
much-
a picture of what it's like a high ceiling, 1-story industrial / office
industrial park.
complex.
Yeah, it's like an industrial park. Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's
here in
nice and
Arizona,
treed and everything, but it's kind of, 18-wheelery a little bit,
Yeah, it's kind of a little bad. It's just like a standard industrial park area, which made sense because the rent is lower there and it's close to the college.
And they have a big giant open office with a gazillion terminals. It is like a NASA launch
you were telling
control
about that.
center.
Yeah, you saw it with Tim Pool and all were there. Well, also, and granted, I didn't get to go inside like you did, but on the outside of both buildings, there were all sorts of like chairs but it wasn't just chairs. They were like outdoor sofas, almost like if you go to a fancy country club and you have those nice outdoor sofas that are arranged in circles that are typically a fire pit. There was no fire pit, but they were arranged with that same look, and you can, plus with the great Arizona weather, it's hanging out outside.
It was like a Google
thing here.
headquarters hanging out, massage, whatever for college-age students to hang out. That's what it was.
Exactly. It's exactly what it looked like. It looked like this is a place to be relaxed and where young people can feel safe and just talk and hang out under the stars and kind of shoot the you-know-what on occasion. So I could see the energy from outside. There was probably at least 100 people there, and people just came and went. They had to find a place to park because what happened was the GPS would tell you how to get there, but then the road was closed down, so a lot of people were new to that area, and that was this little thing. There was a guy outside the police blockade who had a van, and he was selling T-shirts and things, which I didn't even want to look at. I thought it was a little bad taste to be like, I'm not there for shopping, but for what it's worth, he was there. And there was a gentleman right outside the main gate where the epicenter of this entire memorial, and he just stood there with I'm not making this up, like a 12-foot tall cross, giant, wooden or, I don't know, structured cross. It was huge. And he just stood there holding it up the entire time. He had a little mini amp, and it would be silent, but then every 5 minutes, he would just put on a song. It would be an inspirational song, Stand By Me or something like that. And it was, where God Bless America, something like that. So every 5 minutes or so. And not that he was in charge or anything, but people just kind of respected what he was doing, the kind of environment he was bringing there. Also, I heard a song, which maybe some of you have heard. It's a Charlie Kirk country song that someone just made in 1 week. And I didn't realize it was in 1 week because it sounded really good. It was very professional, and it was very heartfelt. I only heard it once.
AI can do it now.
Well, yeah. Touche. But anyway, that song was played. Interesting that there was on the other side of the street was what looked like apartments, an apartment complex, and the main entrance, where one of the ways getting in was all blocked from the police. So I'm sure all the people in the apartment complex were dealing with all the traffic and problems. The thing that stood out the most, and this is a little bit what you were just talking about, what Charlie Kirk put together is just, has to be hijacked by someone. They're salivating to hijack it. It's almost like someone has built up, it's kind of like these gold bugs. They spent their whole life collecting all this gold or some kind of investment, and then they die, and then the whole family is now fighting over the asset at the end. And he created this, and why it's so important. It's not just a bunch of people or voters. It's the voting lists, which you always say, it's always about the lists, right? He's got all the lists and contacts. And most importantly, he has what no other influencer, no other politician, no other, PAC has in their back pocket. Only Charlie Kirk had. And that is the primo demographic, right? And both in money, the marketing, which is the youth, but also the political prime demographic. It's interesting how the older generation has aged more and more, and they're not letting go power. Nancy Pelosi, even Donald Trump. I mean, Mitt Romney. I mean, it's amazing how politics today has turned into the Golden Girls and guys. I mean, everyone is old. I remember back in the day when you had like a Jack Kennedy that was how old was he? 35 or something when he got in. I mean, just there was youth. There was youth and excitement in the future. You could see that. I mean, it took a Jack Kennedy to become president to say, I have a vision of man on the moon in 10 years. I mean, it took someone like that. And yet for reasons that go beyond for right now, because you and I both had probably a lot of, proper good ideas about why, but, that old generation refuses to let go of power. And there's many dynamics involved. And unfortunately, it has coddled the young generation. And it's almost like we're not allowing them to grow up. And I mean, it's a combination of forces culturally and such. But the older generation just does not trust the younger generation, and the younger generation doesn't act like an adult half the time. So it goes both ways. But Charlie Kirk was helping these men especially, but men and women to grow up, to find their own maturity, purpose in life. All sorts of things that college, all that money in college, and they're supposedly learning to get a degree, and yet they're coming out feeling empty,
beaten out of them,
and vapid. Yeah, and they felt just like it's like college now is like empty calories. You eat a whole bag of potato chips and you're still hungry, and you feel worse for it afterwards. That seems to be what's occurred. And he was giving some nourishment in different ways. Unfortunately, the left, all they saw was you're throwing your Jesus crap at us and trying to convert people, and and separation of church and state, and however they would interpret that.
A Gallup poll shows the percentage of Americans saying college is very important has fallen to 35%.
Really? Wow. That's a shame it's not lower. But yeah, so you have that. And so he had that demographic.
And that's from 75%, 15 years ago, in 2010.
Yeah.
I mean, it's plummeting. It's all micro, learn how to freaking plumber.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm having this debate with my family. I have some nephews, and, we're in a tough spot because I'm recommending. I said, look, I would not be going to college, especially now, the economy falling apart, and college is worthless. Don't go. But talking to normie family members who don't quite grasp why. It's like, wait a minute. If you have a medical degree, you went to college, so why would you want our kids to just have a menial blue-collar job? I'm like, yeah, because blue-collar jobs are going to be driving the Rolls Royces soon. But, without getting into all the economic
it's like your
debate.
daughter, Phaedra, is learning Chinese as what, a translator? I got Optimus Robot's going to do that.
Yeah. So she's she's learning some things too. But to me, it's like, okay, you learn an ability that hopefully can translate into something later on without having to go to college. That's my whole gamble a little bit. If you really need college to be a doctor or something, so be it. But to me, if you don't have to, don't go. But to have to learn a skill like that before you even finish high school, it's better than a college degree, because if you have a talent like that, then another company would probably just pay for your training to have that skill. Because learning Mandarin is not something you just take a college class and you just figure it out quick. But like you said, to your point, and I'm aware, that's why Elon Musk says he doesn't care if his kids learn another language. He'd rather them learn to code. Of course, he said that before AI took off and doing the coding for everybody. But he was just saying, hey, why learn a language? Because the computers will do it for you, like spell check. But I digress. So Charlie Kirk has the
universal translator.
So Kirk has not just the list, but he earned the trust, and a growing trust and movement of the youth that I didn't even see to that to that level, to my detriment. I mean, I knew who he was, and he was touching the youth. I didn't see to that level. But obviously, people do. And one group, and here's what I'm getting to, who really sees it, and very important, and man, I saw it last night, is the Israelis. What I found fascinating was at the memorial, I counted at least 10 or more Israeli flags. And I sent you, I think, one picture that had a couple on there. I have more. I just didn't have, there's other pictures. I just didn't have enough room to send them all to you. But I counted at least 10. Now, that's a big memorial, but it was, there were no German flags. There was no, Swedish flags. There's no other, no Mexican flags. You'd think there'd be some Mexican. No. But they're Israeli flags all all around this memorial, and they stood out because everything was red, white, and blue, and then they put these Israeli flags up. I'm like, what the hell is that? And that's on top of, I mean, of course, I know what's going on. That's on top of Bibi Netanyahu coming out, trying to co-opt this in a sense and say, oh, it's a national tragedy for America, and we feel so bad. And Charlie Kirk was one of us. He even mentioned that Charlie was
There was nothing
planning,
political about that.
yeah, of course, that he was going to be visiting Israel. He was going to do one of those state-funded tours.
Which 250 congressmen just recently went to Israel.
Yep.
Standing for a group for what the shit is that?
And they're all in AIPAC. And remember Matt Gaetz? Remember that video I played for the show a few weeks ago where Matt Gaetz talked about the first time he went, and he didn't even want to go, but he said he was being pressured. It was when he was a freshman senator. He was being pressured by the other senators and that on the whatever committee he was on. I guess that had something to do with spending of something that was dealt with international, and he was basically wink being told that if you're going to be on this committee, you have to kind of like do the Israel thing. You got to you have to at least take the tour. You don't have to join AIPAC. I guess they officially told him you don't have to, but you really need at least you have to take the trip. And so he goes, oh fine, and he did the trip. And just to rehash for those of you that didn't hear it, he was there. He's in this hotel. It's all organized by the Israeli government. So you're in this hotel that they, of course, choose. Everyone has all their rooms assigned. And, because it's for their own safety. So, that way the Israeli Secret Service making sure all of our government officials are safe. And then the next morning, they had an arranged bus trip, kind of like a tour bus of a bunch of senior citizens with cameras. And they all had to get on the bus and go off. And, of course, they determine where you should go and what you should see. And things that are safe for your own safety. The quick tangent, Jimmy Carter, I heard. It was Dave Chappelle, of all people, who was talking about this. He said why he respected Jimmy Carter. He said he maybe wasn't a great president, but he was a good man. He said that when he went over to Israel, they tried to do the same thing. They had him come over. They were giving him the tour. And Jimmy Carter said, well, I'd like to see the Palestinians. I want to go over and see where this wall, the barrier wall.
Why
I'd like
do you
to go
want to
visit
do
the Palestinians.
that?
And they said, why would you want to do that? He goes, well, I'd like to go. This is Jimmy Carter. And, he's the most peaceful man, Jimmy Carter. And he says, no, you don't really want to do that. You don't want to do that. And he says, no, I really want to go. And they said, fine, if you go, our security is not going to follow you or help you. You're on your own. They pulled the security just because he was going somewhere where they didn't want him to go, thinking that
and
by
then
playing
putting them on the
hardball,
roofs to take them out.
and Jimmy Carter, he goes, I think he was not president at this point. I mean, maybe he was not president. I can't recall when this story took place. But Jimmy Carter, he goes, fine, I'm going anyway. He called their bluff, and he went anyway. And, the Palestinian people were, I'm not trying to be all pro-Palestinian on this point, but, they're very respectful. And I heard a lot of Palestinians to this day deeply respect Jimmy Carter. Like he really made an impression on them because he was the only president to do so and defy the Israeli government. It's a little bit like when Ronald Reagan went over after the wall fell with Gorbachev and he was walking around St. Basil's Cathedral. I told you I ran into a street vendor when I was in Moscow who still remembered Ronald Reagan. He came to his little booth there when the Russians are trying to scurry off and brush off all the vendors. And they almost arrested this guy who was just selling art, just like charcoal art paintings. And Ronald Reagan saw I'd say the KGB for sure was probably not KGB, but the security was like getting ready to push this guy out by force.
Support the free market.
And Ronald Reagan goes, no, I'd like to see what he's selling. And he grabbed Nancy, and they walked over and made them all look bad. And all of a sudden, security had to let the guy go. And he's showing Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan bought like 2 or 3 of them right there. The guy was like, when he found out I was an American when I was over there, he was telling me that. He probably tells that story to every American he runs into. So that's the impression that Jimmy Carter did. But anyway, this is what happened was that Matt Gaetz goes on this tour. He was getting ready to go on the tour bus. And then he said he forgot something. I don't know, his camera or something happened. He had to go back to the room. He says, look, guys, I'll get a taxi or whatever. I'll meet you guys where where the tour bus goes. He goes back to the room unannounced, and there's this dude in his room, right? Many of you have heard the story. If not, pull it up. Matt Gaetz talks about, guy in his hotel room in Israel or something. I think we played it on the show. And so he shows up, and there's this guy, and he's like, who the hell are you? And he's like, and he was not dressed like a hotel person.
Need any towels?
Yeah. And he goes, oh, well, I work for the hotel. And he goes, well, show me an ID. He goes, oh, I'll have to get it later. I'm sorry. He didn't have any ID. He said, the main security just wanted to make sure everything was safe, and he made some stupid excuse, and then he ran out of there. And it always sat with Matt Gaetz. It was such an odd event, and of course it was the beginning of him being a senator. But that's just one trigger that leads into other things. You go, So now you've got Israel that
Matt Gaetz claims he found AIPAC dude hotel.
If you want to play that video, it's only like
on
a minute.
Congressional trip to.
Play it. It's like a minute or two.
Because the freaking computer's.
Oh, it's not going. All right. So this to me is where Israel has a problem. They had a meeting with YouTube influencers about a year ago. Tim Pool was invited. It's how I knew about it. And a lot of people didn't know at first. They had heard that he went to this influencer meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu himself, foreign leader. And I don't know all the influencers who were there. It could have been, I don't know, maybe Megyn Kelly was there. I have no idea. But Tim went. People found out who was there, and so he talked about it, had a little egg on his face because people were thinking he was hiding something as he's being co-opted by Israel. But he said, no, he says, look, I'm a journalist. If a world leader is going to have a meeting, I'm going to listen to him, and I don't blame him. I do the same thing. They had what's called, I guess you probably know about this, Chatham House Rules, Chatham House Rules, which I guess is some kind of thing amongst, I don't know, journalists where it's meant to allow people to freely ask questions in such a pseudo-public setting.
Kind of like parliamentary procedure thing, Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, I don't know if it's Robert's. Is it Robert's
No,
Rules?
it's not. But
it's
they
not.
have
The Chatham House. The idea is that you can talk about what was said in the room or what the ideas were, but everyone agrees not to label who said it. So it's just the way that you
The
talk
Chatham
about.
House rule allows participants in a meeting to use the information discussed, but not to reveal the identity or affiliation of any speaker.
Right, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
It's kind of like our supper club. You're not allowed to videotape.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. It's kind of like supper club. So Tim Pool went there and he's talked about what happened. He said essentially, Bibi Netanyahu is up there and trying to get the influencers to understand, because many of them are all turning on Israel, that Israel's needed for our protection, that defending Israel is in our best interest, that if Israel falls, then the terrorists are all going to come after us because they just hate America, right? It's the old playbook. So he's trying to do this now with the new media because they've realized they've lost that media. Tim said that the overall majority opinion when he was making that point was that many to most of the influencers in attendance began chuckling. Some of them outright laughed at that concept. So it's good to hear that, as a group, they were already throwing it back at Netanyahu's face. But anyway, that was the back and forth. But clearly, Netanyahu knows that their days might be numbered, which is why, and I don't mean Israel's wiped off or something. I'm not wishing anything bad for them, of course. But it's the fact that their existence so far and their aggression, I think, or their, let's just say, they've had engagements with 7 countries and 7 of their neighbors in the last, decades or so. I mean, it's kind of a lot when you're constantly battling with your neighbors. Now, they will argue that they're always the victim about it. They're getting attacked. And, that gets into he said, she said. I'm not getting into that right now. But the point is that they are, in large suit, it being defended by American dollars and American involvement. I don't think many people are going to disagree with that. And the fact that they supposedly have a nuke that no one knows about or so everyone denies. So for a couple of reasons, they are, they're counting on America's support to allow that exception, wink, wink, and also our military and money. So what happens when the voting bloc in America changes? It used to be that Democrats that were more Jewish people who were Democrats supported Israel, and then you had conservatives who tended to be more Christians and the religious people who said, well, we don't have to bomb other countries, or protect other countries, but Israel's different because it's in the Bible. So for the conservatives, it was more religious linked, and for the left, it was ethnic. At least they had their both blocks. But now it's falling apart, right? The left, obviously, which I never expected. I never thought I'd see the day where the left suddenly became, pushing back against Israel. And now you have the Tea Party conservatives, fiscal conservatives, the non-interventionist conservatives, libertarians, thanks Dr. Paul and many others, is that now we're not getting involved. And the only Americans left that are holding on to this idea that we need Israel, Israel's our best friend, without Israel we all fall apart, blah, 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 is what's left of the Fox News demographic. It's the seniors who've been brought up on this, God, faith, country, they're still watching Bret Baier. That's the last demographic. And as Tim Pool even mentioned, to be out to his face, apparently, and he admitted, and he said this, he said, look, you guys have about 10 years left. Because in 10 years, the conservatives, what's left of Fox News audience is gone for a bunch of reasons. Mainly they're, dying off. And then who's left? The new generation, who's the generation that since they've been born, we've been at war in the Middle East. Non-stop. And our economy's, they're going to be destitute. They can't have kids. They can't afford it. They can't afford a car. The economy still has to play itself out. All of this. And are we still going to be scared about a bunch of what's happening in the Middle East? Especially when now the Palestinians, they have a voice. When other countries have a voice. It's not just ABC telling us how the poor Israelis are getting bombed by these evil terrorists with turbans. I mean, we've gone past that. And now they're losing the conservatives. You've got Matt Walsh, you've got, Candace, you've got, of course, people like ourselves have been hammering this for decades. So now when you start to lose mainstream conservatives and they become older, it's not just young people, it's all the way up until Tucker Carlson's demographic. He's in his 50s, Megan's in her 50s, you and I, 50s, of course you're an old man, but we're all, and Ernie's pretty good for his age. He's really a young guy, but most of the influencers, I don't know many that are in their 60s or 70s.
I can
that
walk
are
pretty
really
fast for an old man.
You're doing good. You're doing great. But that are pushing back with Israel as much. You've got Mark Levin, complete full on for Israel. Even what's it, the Prager, for Dennis Prager, I have a lot of respect for. But I agree with almost everything he says.
I've lost a lot of interest in the Prager University stuff because of their heavy weight towards Israel. It's just,
I agree. I completely agree. Is that was the area I started to disagree with him about. But it's almost like we could agree with almost everything, but when it comes to Israel, it goes back to that marching orders for Israel.
The double standard.
Exactly. Even someone who I respect deeply, like Dennis Prager. So I don't look at him as just taking a payoff from Bibi. It's possible. I don't really believe that. That's just my opinion.
Double standard.
But true. But that double standard comes from almost like a cultural impression that is just generational. And that's my point. When that generation dies off, whatever gyrations in their brain that they have, I have a friend, a really close friend of mine that you kind of know, and he's all, agrees, non-interventionist, anti-war, get out of Ukraine, don't start new wars, but he's also a born-again Christian. And the minute you bring up Israel, okay, that includes Israel too, right? Well, and all of a sudden it's like a Cirque du Soleil act of all sorts of excuses and gyrations to explain why that's different, and that the Bible says this, and if you defend Israel, then it means you defend God, and if you defend God, blah, blah. Then we get into the whole religious, so I said, so this is a religious war. That's what it is. Everything else is a geopolitical conflict, but when it comes to Israel, it comes down to a religious issue, which is, not a reason to be going to war for this country. But anyway, that generation, to finish up, that generation is dying off. And when the Dennis Pragers, people who are, I think, good people, but they're still locked in lockstep with this Israel mantra, when they're gone, then you have the Tim Pool generation, and they're already off the reservation about Israel. Hence, why, going back to this, why Charlie Kirk and his list and the momentum he was building up was so unbelievably critical to Israel. And when you see it from that perspective, I go, holy crap, the pressure this guy must have had now that they lost the youth on the left, and now they're losing the youth on the right. And here's Charlie Kirk, this one man holding, in many ways, the control, the reins to Israel's safety and security. I mean, comes down to one man who now I'm realizing how many people thought he was going to be president, and I don't doubt that at all. I mean, he was poised for that, so he had to be on Bibi's side, no matter what it took. And it sounded like towards the end of his life, and I have to say, I don't think this is Israeli plot. I know it's going around out there, but they were definitely very interested in some Charlie Kirk. And that's what even Bibi said indirectly, was that it's a shame that, he was just saying what Kirk was a hero and for free speech and blah, blah, blah.
One thing we haven't talked about.
And what he
said...
What Netanyahu said is that it's a shame we didn't get to meet Charlie because he was planned to have the sojourner to Israel. He said it looks like that was coming up soon. They had him locked in. And Candace and Tucker and many others have said now on the record that each of them has had, they're admitting now, they said there was private conversations, but because of what Netanyahu is doing and the pushback, the politicalization of putting Israeli flags at his memorial, which was completely uncalled for, but they're doing it out of desperation to grab the narrative that all of you young people who missed Charlie Kirk, he really was on our side, so don't turn on us. That's all they have left, and that is why you're hearing Candace and all of them coming out saying things they probably shouldn't because it was private, but they're coming out in a unified force saying, no, Charlie did not hate Israel, but he was just the last, month, 6 months, whatever, he was finally starting to come around of what was going on with Gaza, things that Tucker has been saying. He's starting to see, as I did, I'm late to the party with it myself, that he was seeing Israel, the government, not the people, we're not anti-Semitic, but he was seeing through the fog of lies of you can't question anything about Israel, otherwise you're anti-Semitic, and then these new rules that are coming out that they're trying to pass, that you're not allowed to burn the Israeli flag, that you're not allowed to say anything negative against the government of Israel, otherwise they're going to take your passport. I mean, all this crap, and Charlie Kirk was being forced by everyone to take a stand on this, and it sounded like he was leaning towards where Tucker is, and that was where this, anyway, that was like a fault line. Go ahead.
They had a law that they passed. Trump made a big deal, executive order or some BS. Any government agency, state, whatever, it was illegal for you to boycott Israel. You can't have, any kind of an action that would be, I'm like, what? That's like going up to somebody and saying, all right, now pay attention. I don't want you to think about boats. Stop thinking about, I know you're thinking about boats. You're thinking about it, aren't you? Right now you're thinking about boats. There's law. Stop thinking about boats. I mean, I'm like, what the hell? They even bring this stuff up. So it was, but my experience as activist, and one of the things that when I first came across this was in '92 during the Ross Perot thing. And the reason I got involved, I wasn't involved in the campaign but I went and spoke at, boom, they'd have it was like a Ron Paul thing. They'd have a presentation at some ballroom at a hotel or whatever, and there were 700-800 people in there. It was amazing. Before they would even, do anything in the news, they tried to make sure that just went away. And it wouldn't. That's a long story. But my whole thing was, and I knew election law in Arizona, there was no mechanism by which for him to even get on the ballot as an independent. They kind of forgot that part in the late 70s, part of my lawsuit and all that kind of stuff. So during that, as it went through, there was an enormous database that I had created because they had a story about me and what I was doing or something, and they put my phone number in the Arizona Republic, just to piss me off or something. I mean, stop bothering me, go bother Ernie, that kind of thing. My phone didn't stop for days, and I had a big, 12-inch high, twisted, rainbow-colored Post-it note kind of stack thing that you used to have. And I went through that whole thing. It was, 1,000 people. And it was name, phone number, zip code. That's all I wanted. And an address. I got an address, but I sorted it by zip code because I want to know geographically where everybody was. So name, address, phone number, and then we mailed there. That's a long story. But what happened was that database became so desired by they, them, those. And it was Doug Weed that later became part of the Ron Paul thing. And he was, I'll just say it, man. He was not a good guy. I knew from the early 90s to Politico that these guys, it's amazing, long story. But that was my first experience of how much they want databases, because they know that people that are involved, that go, they're worth 10, 20,000 other people that actually have boots on the ground. The people that show up, the influencers, the ones that, are motivated to actually do. Everybody else is just freaking roadkill. I mean, they don't care about that. Then when the Ron Paul, thing came out, what was the first thing that they wanted more than anything else? After the 2008 campaign, or during that and so on, there was Kent Snyder, which was his aide since back in the day, and he was an intern, I think, in his congressional office in the late 70s, 80s, and then he became one of his main guys. He was campaign chairman, and then Lou Moore was the campaign manager that I dealt with mostly. But I knew Kent because when we schedule Ron for Freedom Summits or Come On Radio, I deal with him. And that's when this happened. In early 2007, in January, I called and said, "Is this true? Are you guys really going to run?" "Yep, if we can get," I go, "That's it. Talk to the hand. Peace out. You guys do you. We're going to do the level." I already knew what I was going to do. Didn't want to have anything to do with their internal Republican BS. Kent Snyder had AIDS. Come to find out later, a lot of people, and libertarians don't care, he was gay. Well, Ron Paul, Christian libertarian kind of guy, and he didn't care. But Kent wound up coming out being gay, and I think everybody we just don't care. I mean, that was not on my radar screen. But he had AIDS, and he got ill, and he died. And the first thing, he's in the hospital room. "Oh, it's good to see you and everything. What's the password to the database? We need a database. You can't go without the database. We need. That became Campaign for Liberty. Then, the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and whatever, and Liberty Report, all that kind of stuff. Database. Perot database. How popular would that be? Ron Paul database. How important would that be? Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA. How freaking popular is that database? With SMS messaging, doing their phone numbers, their emails, their address, their statistic. You go on any interface you have with man, they were a collecting database. And that was the primary function that I saw at their headquarters. That is what all the computers and phone lines and whatever the hell was in there, that these college students were in there cultivating, communicating with, answering phones, database. That database is worth $1 trillion. Literally, because whoever gets in charge in Congress, that's where the financial appropriations are for this country. Trillions of dollars are at stake. I bet you they already got it. They, them, those, somebody's got whatever. But it doesn't matter if you're not principled by the 15 gazillion YouTube shorts, TikToks, and interviews that Charlie Kirk had done over the years since he was a teenager. He died at only 31. He's been doing this for, 15 years or something. This is such a perfect example. Circumstances, serendipity, the overlap of the star-crossed, whatever the hell, that I don't think they're going to be able to hijack it. I don't think they're going to be able to. Because there's so much, it's like them going out saying, with all the thousands and thousands of hours of me doing radio since February of 2003. Now you can just load up an MP3 It'll spew out text. You can search that. We may be doing that here directly. They're going, well, Ernie said or thought about, really? I got a whole freaking, dozen hours on that little infinitesimal side note tangent thing on whatever the hell. They're not going to be able to speak for me. This is like when they're the January 6th thing. They want to go, hey, man, we got where you can't take it down. It's all on our own servers. IPFL kind of bite me. Bring it. Same thing with Charlie. Same thing with Ron Paul. In fact, that's why Ron Paul would give all his 5-minute speeches on the House floor all the time. This was the record. Technology now has changed it to where I don't think, certainly not for any amount of real time, they're going to be able to hijack what Charlie Kirk built. And it pisses them off. But it doesn't mean they won't try. And just like in the 90s, the NRA would, National Republican apologists, they would say and do whatever the hell so they could have a little gun control so they could be against it. I saw that over and over and over. This is so, they're not going to be able to do this time. And you have young people that have experience with this kind of documentation and social media and doing outing of, and you get, the Ian Carrolls and the Candace Owens and the Tuckers and, it's not going to go the same way. And all of the control measures that they had before, they could count on Project Mockingbird, where they controlled the influencers back then. And when I saw it, the first time I saw it, PewDiePie. He was just some gamer guy that had 70 million followers, and he said something that didn't align with their narrative or whatever. And they're like, you're in with it. I don't even know what happened to that guy. But man, he wasn't playing, and they didn't like it. You're either for us or against us. And who's us? They, them, those. So I'm very comfortable in what we are doing. The Occupy the Land thing is my solution. And the main focus is just be more self-sufficient, autonomous, have your own principles, and perpetuate the species with pro-living, pro-life attitudes. You are in favor of freedom to keep on keeping on, to stop being controlled and manipulated like you were silver or something. So this is what I think is going to happen, but they, them, those are going to do everything they can to try and slow it down, stop it, divert it, and the devil is always, I don't exist. There's no evil. Are you crazy? You tinfoil hat wearer? So the enlightenment that I think is necessary is one step closer. It's one day closer. We are closer than we were, probably more so than we have been for a long time. This is what they feared. It's what was happening, and they, them, those can expect it to be accelerated. How does that manifest itself? I have no idea. I have no idea. And I don't have any confidence until they get a real hard purple finger lock in-person voting of whatever. Because that has been my thing for decades. They are not having accurate elections. This is not the will of the people. This is not representative, even with all the generations of all of the takeover of the government education, mind control of your children, the blue-faced smart app of vibe-controlled echo chamber that they put these kids in to think that, if we take out Charlie Kirk, then the whole world will be furry gay. What,
hey, Ernie,
where are you
Ernie,
getting this?
Ernie, bringing voting, Arizona, and Charlie Kirk all in the same conversation, which is your favorite. Where do you think, did you ever hear anything from Charlie Kirk about Arizona, Maricopa County voting? I mean, if anyone understood the system, it was him, even though he's a young guy. He was part of it. He saw the pros and cons, and he's a local to us. So I'm just wondering, did you ever hear him getting the sense of the problems we have here, or do you think he was clueless?
He did. I remember him doing, supportive, accurate. I mean, he didn't emphasize voting. I mean, he was like, be conservative, don't vote for, bad guys, I just didn't. I never got that impression that he was. I'm sure he was pro-voting. Get out and register to vote and all that kind of crap. But I don't. When he had an opportunity to talk, it was more engagement and answering questions and doing that. When he get up on the stage, it was more principles and a biblical thing. I felt comfortable with anything that he had to say. There was nothing that, that's one thing. I have a lot of, behind the scenes, antiwar.com in the late 90s, I think it was, after Kosovo, they started, Eric Garris, Justin Raimondo, and these guys, and, there's a lot of these guys I know, Scott Horton, Woods, and, a lot of the guys, Ron Paul, people. And they were way more libertarian than conservative, which meant a lot of them were gay, and hell, it was almost like a job requirement in anti-war. But the libertarians, I don't care. But somebody was taking on the position openly to be anti-war. I'm already against the next war, kind of thing. That was the first time that I ever gave my credit card or debit card or whatever online. That was the first time. So that I could be a $5 a month contributor. It is the only place that I do that. There may be one or two others now or something. I can't remember. But antiwar.com is the only place that I'll donate to that, to anti-war. They called me a few days ago. They're doing a fundraiser because thermonuclear war is around the corner, So it's always good to do some fundraising. Well, I told them they'd always call me because I was a contributor, and I know some of the people. So-and-so said to say hi and got $50 on you, that kind of thing. So I told them, I said, look, I got my own crap and everything. No, don't bother me anymore. You're lucky I'm even keeping, the account, giving you stuff every month, and, peace out, and don't bother if I feel motivated, and I'll help you with different stuff. And we've done different banner ads for different programs. Well, I just talked to him, a friend of mine there, and I go, look, here, we'll put, whatever your next fundraiser, we'll put it up on Freedom's Phoenix. Here's the dimensions. Send me the banner ads, and we'll help you that way. I can do that. And it was just with their talking to them, they are not pro-Israel. They are not pro-Christian for damn sure. And a lot of the people that I've known that are good friends in that, support structure, the more libertarian-leaning people, they're like, yeah, we didn't like this Charlie Kirk thing. Yeah, he was just, he rubbed me the wrong way. He was too anti-gay. He's too this, too that. It didn't represent what their preference was for the culture. So they would ignore them. They didn't pay attention. They're not into it. They don't get it. And talking to just, I didn't get into a big thing of nothing. I don't care. Anti-war, and I made this point. I said, I just want to make sure you make good use of this war profiteering thing. You have a war, we get close to a war. Woo! Fundraising for antiwar.com just went up, and everybody kind of, that's good. I'm glad you guys are there, and I know a lot of you trust you and so on, but I just want to make sure you understand that I've been with the NRA. They'll create gun legislation just so they can be against it as a fundraiser. That's my experience back in the day, certainly in the 90s. I don't know how bad they are now because I don't care, but I don't pay attention. But that's one thing I was like, man, don't be at the point to where, whoa, we need another war so we can make us some money. So I want to make sure that you know that I'm watching, that I help you with fundraising on this, that you're doing something productive with it. The Charlie Kirk thing was because of their libertarian leanings and mindset and more, alphabet soup supportive, whatever. They didn't see it coming. They don't understand the power of this. And talk to, I didn't, I don't care. We're probably going to have some interviews on here. We might kind of squeeze it in there as a topic, anyway. But this is just so people understand there is not as wide a breadth of understanding of the principled reasons why this is such a big deal by anyone that is not open to the principled advocacy that he had for your own personal responsibility as a human being, a father, and a husband. This is why Ron Paul is so popular. He understands. He's part of it. He was looking for a base principle by which to make informed decisions on his votes and his advocacy over a lifetime of he's not an idiot. So I am pretty concerned of where things are going, but I am more optimistic now after Charlie Kirk's assassination than I was before. I was like, man, this is not going to go well. And then Charlie Kirk gets assassinated, and I was filled with not sadness, not revenge, not retribution, not even really a sense of justice, just a sense of resolve. All right, here we go. Freedom's Phoenix. This is what I've been preparing my mind for all this time. The Stoic, philosophy is kind of like you process all the bad things that could happen so you're prepared for it, and that you don't, fall into a pile of blubber when, bad things happen, and you kind of, and you focus on being grateful for what you have. That's kind of in a nutshell. So I'm going, that's kind of how I process this kind of information. And we are in a situation now that a lot of segments of the liberty community that has enormous amounts of overlapping with those of principle based in the Christian faith of turn the other cheek, sell your cloak by a sword, do unto others they do unto you, brother's keeper. I mean, all these different philosophical Judeo-Christian, truisms that are representative of this culture that you keep going on about, but it had to be supported by the goal of the purpose of government, defense of individual rights. This is what I think, and the demonstration by Charlie Kirk of how that's manifested in peaceful debate, and was shot for it. Killed. Spewing blood. It is amazing to me that there hasn't been more references to him as a martyr status. But I tell you what, I'm not comparing him to Christ, okay? But I do want to make this point. It demonstrates to you the power, if you watch like the series The Chosen about the New Testament and Christ, the next season probably be him getting crucified. The power of this type of advocacy, this type of witness, parable, testimony, this type of influence, this type of interaction with crowds, this type, how powerful this type of behavior and influential it is, because this is what Christ was doing. This mechanism, this method. So it's best summed up when a lot of people are saying this. He's in heaven. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Well done. Charlie Kirk, well done. That's the example that we have. That's why it's so powerful. That's why it's going to be a mile marker in human history. I've seen rallies, memorial services in South Korea, in the UK, in Asia, all over the planet. This is not an America thing. This is representative of a much larger Christian thing. What are the Muslims going to be doing? They're taking over Dearborn, Michigan. They want to change the Constitution to the Quran here in the United States. This is going to be a spiritual, religious confrontation, mostly based on peace, philosophy. Who's going to demonstrate love, compassion, empathy, even for your enemies? Where's that going to come from? Generation Next, I hope. That's where I see that we're at. That's why I'm more optimistic now than I was even a couple of weeks ago, because it has been a demonstration of the power of free speech, love, compassion, principle, commitment. All the traits that are, the Greeks would go on about being virtuous. Virtuous isn't a single thing. To be a virtuous human is what? Well, it's a bunch of things. You're virtuous. You're valued in a bunch of different, walks of life, character traits. He's a virtuous person. Not on any one thing, just in general. Hero, example. And it's I wouldn't say it's fortunate, but we are lucky, I think, for Charlie Kirk to have gone out at the peak. Would he have peaked further, later, longer? I don't know. But he was peaking. He was going up. His stock was rising. That's for damn Skippy. And for him to be taken out at a time he was doing it in front of all, this is going to be one of the most popular movies. Who's going to do it? There's a rumor that Elon Musk was going to fund the biopic, the documentary movie of Charlie Kirk or whatever. And then I looked it up, and it was, false claim. It was a clickbait thing out of Korea or some crap like that, and out of Asia. And I'm going, yeah. But you never know. Somebody's doing something. So this is where I see we're at. And this has much less to do with Trump. I don't think Trump, the best thing that he can do is rule one, not be a dick, not get us into war, not do stupid crap like he seems to be, can't help himself. And if he just let it go and, do his job, whatever that is. My opinion. Frank, let's wrap it up.
I have to start getting going. I just want to make the last point, two quick points. First, I agree with you about the reaction with Charlie Kirk, and I've seen a lot more emotions of people around me who have not been as politically active. And for me, obviously, I've been gobsmacked about it and extremely sad, and being a father myself, all the same emotions many of us have. Those of us that have a soul, some humanity, but I haven't felt it the way I've seen people around me, and I think that's very telling. I talked about that in detail in my earlier section. But I feel like you. That's not happy, not glad, of course, but just like, okay, they've made it known they're at war with us, and so many of the normies, the people around me, just had a normalcy bias that just did not really want to know and accept the problems and where we were. It's like they just wanted to turn the other cheek, which the Bible does say, or
it'll fix itself,
it'll fix itself, or not get involved, or maybe it is all Trump anyway, and maybe after when the next president comes, we'll all go back to the way things were, or whatever. It's a normalcy bias. Our side has been like, no, this is a consequence of what we've been seeing, kind of like a train going off the rails, going off the cliff. We've been seeing this for miles, but this is the consequence, and it's almost that Charlie Kirk is at peace. And I feel more at peace. I think is what you're talking about. It's an odd thing, and I think only this audience. I think if you're still listening after all these hours and you get tortured every week, we trust you guys. We follow a same same journey, and I think many of you feel the same way. It's we're not happy, but it's like, okay, it's almost like with the economy. We've been preparing for this for so long, and just to be able to see where things are going, it's like, okay, we've been prepared. We see it coming. Let's just, like, here we go. Let's get through this. We've been preparing. We've been working out for it. Let's pull up our sleeves and let's just be men and women and get and do what we have to do. And I think there's something to that, rather than constantly be in suspense or trying to wait for everyone else to figure it out. Now it's, other people getting red pilled. So it's time, and so it also feels good just having people around us join us, not in a Schadenfreude sense, not in "I told you so," which sometimes it's easy for us to do, but just, okay, we all can see the problem now, and I've argued with you about this for a while, is that if you're just the very educated but the extreme minority libertarian who sees all this, you're not going to get any change. The one advantage to Trump, despite his faults and flaws, and I don't want to start ending the show on us brawling about this one, but it was the fact that he was not the philosophical candidate that you had always wanted. But to me, it's like I knew he would be the bull in the china shop, open up and red pill enough people, normies, to get that percentage of people aware how broken the system is, where the economy's going, how the voting system works or doesn't work. All of this, that it will get past less than 1%, and maybe we can get to 10%, 20%, and that's how you get these changes. And ultimately, when enough people see the problem, that's how you get solutions, one way or the other. So, in any case, that's what I saw, and Donald Trump has definitely been successful on that front, for what it's worth. And that's where I think this Charlie Kirk assassination, as evil as it is, it's just, everyone sees it now for what it is. And the fact that the conservative side did not grab arms. Every time they attack us, they keep waiting for, quote, our side to fit the narrative that they've brainwashed their side about, that we're the intolerant, racist fascists with a bunch of guns, just want them all dead. And they've scared their side for many ways, Operation Mockingbird and other forms of controlled information. But it only goes so far when they're the side constantly creating the problems. And they could try to spin it, and they've done so successfully. Don't listen to the other side. Just listen to us. But at some point, they have to face the reality. And I think that's what the Jimmy Kimmel moment brought up. Someone who we all know, in polite pop culture, is Jimmy Kimmel. And for him to still be in denial at this point, it was too forceful of an example, and I think it's red pilled many normies in there. Anyway, and the last thing is, I was going to start the show with this part, but it's what I've been seeing is the demonization of the right, and so dehumanization, and that's kind of really the term. It's funny, the anti-fascists like to call people like ourselves, racist and bigots and Nazis, fascists, all these terms. But it's really just a scheme that Marxists and others will use to dehumanize. So, this happened over in Germany. The economy is having problems. A lot of it's because of the corruption that created the World War I of their government. And then the government officials that got them in World War I took off with all the money of what was left of Germany, leaving Germany just bankrupt and devoid of men, to take care of their families. And they also raided all of the art on all the German museums, and they were left just holding the bag and the scorn of the world. And so you're going to breed someone like Adolf Hitler, who just has a lot of resentment for the elite and the powers that be. And so, but eventually, the anger was towards the government, and that eventually the government had to change it away from the government onto businesses. And then the businesses, of course, were the rich. And then from the rich or businesses, it turned into the bankers. And then from the bankers, it turned into the Jews. And then from the Jews, it turned it into rats and worse. And then that's how you lead to the Holocaust. And so
Oh, we lost Frank. I know why. Because his battery went dead. He never plugs it in. Well, that's good enough. We can wrap this up. There's so much stuff going on that we didn't talk about. One of the main things I want to make sure gets in case this applies to you. There's so many points about the economy that it's about ready to go. That's why we're going to be having the Xano guy, crypto guy on tomorrow, and Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff will be on noon Eastern, I think it is. Whatever. He's going to be on tomorrow. You look on Freedom's Phoenix, and it has the times up there. And it's he's been a good friend of the show. We've known each other for a long time, and skip to the end. Let him talk. What do I know? I don't have an opinion. I'm just tell us what's up, because he speaks at a lot of crypto conferences because he's nice. A lot of the crypto guys, we all know each other, and he'll go up and say, "Hey, you're doing it wrong," but they want to have a comparison and get to say, "Well, you've been saying it's going to go to nothing since it was nothing, and now it's over 100,000. What do you say now?" Well, it's going to be interesting. What in the effort to save the dollar, they're trying to suck up all the liquidity, all the extra dollars, the inflation that's out there into crypto, and then revalue and program. And this is what they've always wanted. Programmable money. I was shocked that they were so vociferous in their effort to stop any development of crypto. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is perfect for you. And then when you have, the guy that was chairman of Bilderberger, like 2 years, DeCastries comes in and funds a bunch of the development, Blockstream, in developing Bitcoin. Well, there you go, because here it comes. So it's always, will fascism ever come to America? Yep. In the name of anti-fascism, carrying a cross. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's happening. Well, one of the telltale here is, two things that I've been keeping track of, and I thought was going to happen in 2007. When 2007 happened, I was screaming this, going, it was commercial. It was commercial property that was going to go. It did, but they just kind of swept it under the rug, put it on the ballot, had, this TARP thing, the dollar for dollar, the Federal Reserve took it on their balance sheets and kind of, they just hit it and crap and swept it under the rug. But now the cost of the selling, the foreclosing on, the bankruptcy of all these big commercial properties is happening. And it's just, there's nothing they can do about it. I don't know how they're going to hide this. The other thing is, what was weak last time was subprime mortgages. They giving loans to any and everybody to pump up whatever. Well, now it's subprime lenders are collapsing as Wall Street hits new highs. Sound familiar? Yeah, here we go. And a lot of it is in auto loans. Subprime auto loans, they were given all kinds. I don't know what the incentive was, but no Social Security number, no, I got a U.S. citizenship. It was like, hey, but, Juan Valdez and Fogg Mirror, just like they did with housing back in, up to 07, 08, they're doing with car loans, and they cost as much as houses now, and that's starting to go. There's a bunch of this stuff. And like Frank was going on about, here you have billionaires going, and I want all the silver. But did he buy silver, or did he buy silver paper, ETFs? How did he do it? Did he do a futures contract? Because this is what Gerald Celente did. He did that with gold, and then I think it was MF Global. They used his deposits as collateral on Greek bonds. They didn't bail them out in time, and it went to crap and shorted and it's gone. He goes, hey, man, where's my gold? I paid the futures contract. They go, yeah, but you totally agreed. And this line right here that says rehypothecation, which means they get to use his deposits as collateral for their bets on, going on these Greek bonds. And then when that happened, sucks to be you. Hey, you read me up. Hey, you totally agreed, man. Right here on line 37 on page 46, you totally agreed. So a lot of that's coming right now. It's unraveling right now. this is what we've been putting it up on, a lot of different places I get, a lot of these really good work done by aggregating this stuff by John Sneisen from the Economic Truth. And he just putting this thing, well, here's another graph, here's what's happening here, here's where we're going, and I'm like, damn, if this doesn't show you what's happening. So just FYI. So what are you supposed to do? I don't know. I'm not your mother. I bet you wish you bought a crap load of silver. When I'm screaming, I go, it's under $20. It's under $30. I mean, especially when it's under 20. Anything under 20, as much as you got, man, you need to. And I didn't have enough to, significant, but I kept buying as much as I could, or anybody needed some money. They go, guns and silver, man. They go, hey, you want to buy me? Yeah, absolutely, whatever. Same thing, silver, I don't care. Yeah, I need some money. I got some stuff, boom, done. I got a little extra, you're selling over, I get a deal. Yep, gimme. Now it's $42. Bet you wish you had some now, don't you? Huh? What are we at now? 41.75. It's up 16 cents today. 36.43, down 15.40, on gold. So over 3,600, almost $42 on silver. Bitcoin's at 116,000. Man, we're in freaking weird days. What were you doing? Who were you poo-pooing? Why were you? Who was telling you? Who you listen to? Who has credibility now, son bitch? Huh? Why did they have credibility? I had friends that were, man, they loved them some sell, watching Jim Cramer all the time. I'm like, how in the hell are you giving this guy the time of day? What the hell are you thinking? So there's a lot of changes coming. But hopefully, I am I wouldn't say the word confident, but I'm cautiously optimistic and hopeful that it looks like we're going to be okay in the long run. That we're going to emphasize the truth of things. Who's bad? What's bad? What's good? I'm telling you, it's going to come down to basic, fundamental, make babies. Go forth and multiply. Have a place to multiply. Have a place to educate your own kids, to grow your own food, to source your own water, to learn skills that sustain your life. Advocate for liberty to be able to fashion raw materials in your life into your property, to make sure that your government is there to protect that which you have created, that you paid for. That's yours. And quit delegating authority to somebody else with a shiny badge and always available gun. And, here, by the way, take my children and raise them for me. Really? So this is, where I'm coming from. And I don't really have to, I get all ranty here and so on, but I'm just like, I don't really have to push it that much. Really, is it not obvious?